Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Insatiable, Part 2. Her voice, trembling, cut through the silence. Daddy? The words scraped against something deep inside me, something buried under the roar of the hunger. My body moved before I could think, lurching forward, one decayed hand reaching. Her face twisted in horror as she stumbled back, pressing herself against the wall. No, Daddy, stop. Stop. Please, God, stop. But I couldn't. The hunger tore through me, relentless, demanding. Her heartbeat echoed in my ears, a steady drum calling me forward. I reached for her, my jagged breath wheezing like rusted hinges. Her tears glistened in the dim light, her small hands trembling as she held them up, useless shields against what I was about to do. I was almost on her when the memory hit, sharp and blinding. Her tiny hand in mine, sticky with melted ice cream, her laughter bubbling up as she looked at me, wide-eyed with trust. I love you, Daddy. The memory burned, more painful than the hunger. I stopped mid-lunge, my clawed hand hanging inches from her face. Get away from her! Emily's voice rang out, fierce and trembling. She barreled into me with all her strength, the impact jarring but barely enough to move me. A flash of silver caught the weak light. She had a knife. Emily. My voice was a wet croak, unrecognizable. She slashed at me, the blade tearing into the rotted flesh of my shoulder. I didn't feel it. She planted herself between Grace and me, her chest heaving, her eyes locked on mine. You won't touch her, she spat, the fear in her voice barely hidden under the force of her words. Emily shouted without turning, her voice ragged. Go, Grace! Don't look back! Grace hesitated, her tiny figure trembling, then bolted down the stairs. Run, Grace. Run far away from me, baby. The sound of Grace's retreating footsteps faded, leaving only Emily and me in the suffocating silence. She squared her shoulders, her trembling hand gripping the knife like it could keep the darkness at bay. The hallway narrowed as Emily stepped forward, knife trembling in her hand. The dim light from the shattered bulb above flickered across her face, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on mine. Stay back, she said, her voice steady, even as the blade shook. Stop! Stop! Please, God, stop me. This is my love. This is my life. It wouldn't let me stop. The hunger surged like a wave, driving me forward. My rotting legs dragged against the floor, my fingers twitching as they reached for her. I screamed at my body to stop, but it kept going. Stop. Please, for God's sake, stop. But the hunger roared. It was a force, pulling my body like strings on a marionette. Emily lunged forward, slashing the knife, the blade slicing into my forearm. A wet sound, something that used to be flesh tearing open, oozing dark, thick rot. I didn't feel it. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. She'd been expecting pain, a reaction, but there was nothing.
David, listen to me.
Emily's voice broke as she stabbed again, tears streaking her face.
You're in there. I know you are. You love us. You love Grace.
But her words barely reached through the roaring hunger, and my hands moved without me, reaching for her. Her expression faltered, the resolve cracking just slightly, but she gripped the knife tighter. She stepped back, placing herself fully between me and stairs. I lunged. The knife slashed again, this time catching my ribs. I felt the wet scrape of the blade against bone, the sound sharper than the pain I couldn't feel. She screamed for Grace again, her voice raw and desperate.
Run, baby. Run!
Grace's sobs echoed from the bottom of the staircase, her small figure darting out of sight. I lunged, my decayed fingers closing around Emily, seizing her in a moment when her eyes flicked toward Grace. A heartbeat of distraction was all the hunger needed to strike. Emily screamed, her voice cracking into something raw and animalistic. Her fists pounded against my chest, each blow weaker than the last. Her nails raked my skin, peeling away rotted flesh, exposing yellowed bone. She twisted, fought, but I held her like a vice. Her body was warm, so warm, it burned against the rod of my hands. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and terrified. For half a heartbeat, I thought I could stop. Then the hunger surged again, tearing through me. My body moved before I could think. My teeth sank into her neck, tearing through skin and muscle with a sickening wet snap. Hot blood surged into my mouth, metallic and thick, spilling down my throat in waves. The taste was fire and ecstasy, searing through what little humanity was left in me, and I hated how good it felt. Emily's scream turned into a gurgle, her hands clawing at my face, pushing weakly as I tore deeper. Stop. 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 But I couldn't. The hunger was everything. Her body jerked once, then stilled. Her blood ran warm and steady over my hands, pooling at my feet. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, couldn't understand. Her eyes found mine, wide and glassy, but there was something else there, a flicker of recognition, a memory, love, maybe, or disgust. Then it was gone. The light in her eyes snuffed out, leaving only the dull, empty stare of the dead. I let her fall, her body crumpling to the floor like something broken, discarded. My hands shook, slick with her blood, her warmth already fading. I wanted to scream, to claw at myself, to rip this hunger out of me with my bare hands. But there was nothing left, nothing but the hunger and her lifeless body at my feet. Emily, I tried to whisper, the word choking in my throat. Black ooze dripped from my mouth, pooling with her blood on the cold, unforgiving floor, the hunger inside me roaring in triumph. No. What have I done? Then I heard it, a small, sharp gasp. Grace. I turned, my body sluggish. She stood at the base of the stairs, her small hand clutching the railing. Her eyes were wide, red from crying, her face pale. "Daddy?" she whispered. Her voice cracked something inside me that should have died with Emily. I tried to speak, to tell her I was sorry. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was a moan, wet and broken. Black ooze dripped from my chin, pooling at my feet. Grace screamed, her voice breaking into choking sobs.
Mommy! No, Mommy, please!
She stumbled back, gripping the railing as if it could hold her world together. My chest, if I still had one, felt like it was caving in, but the hunger didn't care. It surged again, pulling me toward her. Graksh, I croaked, the word barely intelligible, but she heard it, and she turned and ran, her small figure disappearing into the dark. I stumbled forward, my body following her scent, even as my mind begged for the darkness to take me. The hunger stirred again, twisting inside me, demanding I follow. I looked down at Emily. Her blood was still warm on my hands, her lifeless body crumpled and broken at my feet. I am losing everything. The hunger didn't care. It roared, pulling me to my feet, dragging me after Grace. Number, please, let her go. But the hunger will never let go. The street stretched out before me, empty and cold. My feet drag against the pavement, leaving wet, dark smears behind. The hunger had quieted, but it wasn't gone. It never was. It coiled beneath my skin, waiting for the next surge. I stumbled past darkened houses, their windows like hollow eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, sharp and frantic. I froze, listening, but the sound faded into the hum of distant traffic. What am I doing? Emily's face swam before me, frozen in that final, lifeless stare. Her blood still clung to my hands, thick and sticky. My body ached, not from the fight, but from something deeper, a guilt so heavy it made every step feel like wading through tar. Then a flash. Sterile white walls. A row of test tubes, their labels blurred and meaningless. A shattered vial, the liquid spreading across my face and hands like blood. I stumbled, my shoulder hitting a street lamp. The cold metal bit into my decayed skin, snapping me back to the present. The hunger stirred, hissing in my ears, but the memory clawed its way back, stronger now. We shouldn't push this far. My own voice, frantic, echoed in my head. I could almost feel the heat of a lab, the hum of machinery. But the memory didn't stay. It bled, twisting into something else. Emily laughing, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand, her hair falling loose around her face. Grace on the living room floor, cradling her teddy bear, her smile lighting up the room. Stop, don't think about them. The hunger seized those memories, warping them. Emily's laughter turned into her scream. Grace's smile faded, replaced by wide, terrified eyes. I doubled over, gripping my knees. The hunger whispered, "Keep moving. She's still out there." I obeyed. The woods were silent except for the sound of my feet dragging through the underbrush. The world was muffled here, the thick canopy of trees blotting out the moonlight, the air heavy with damp earth and rot. My breath, or what passed for it, came in short, ragged bursts. The hunger had returned, gnawing at my insides like a rabid animal. Then I saw her. At first, it was just a shadow, something flickering between the trees. But as I stepped closer, the shape took form. Emily. Number. It can't be. She stood with her back to me, her head tilted at an odd angle. Her clothes hung in tatters where I had shredded them, dark stains splattered across her blouse. Her arms hung stiffly at her sides, and her posture was too rigid, too dead. Emily? But voice cracked, low and growling. She turned. Her eyes were clouded, a milky gray that seemed to pierce straight through me. Her skin, once smooth and warm, sagged in loose patches, exposing butchered flesh. Her mouth hung open slightly, lips cracked and blackened. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. My mind had been slipping since the hunger took hold, twisting memories into cruel replicas of reality. But this wasn't a memory. She was here, standing in front of me. She wasn't human anymore. My hands trembled as I stepped closer. Her head tilted further, her movements jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. Her gaze locked on mine, and something flickered in her expression, a shadow of recognition. The hunger in me stirred, hissing and coiling like a living thing. I could feel it inside her too, like a heat radiating from her decayed form. It linked us, bound us in a way that no words could. She took a step forward, her movements uneven, but deliberate. I didn't move. I couldn't. Her mouth opened, and a low, gurgling sound emerged. Half a growl, half a moan. She took another step, then stopped. We stood there, facing each other. Then the sound of footsteps broke the silence. A man appeared on the path, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He was walking a dog, a large, lumbering thing that barked at the sight of us. The man froze, his eyes darting between me and Emily. The hunger surged, roaring in my ears. My body moved before I could think, lurching toward him. Emily moved too, a grotesque mirror of my movements. The man screamed as we collided with him, our hands tearing at his clothes, his flesh. His flashlight clattered to the ground, the beam illuminating the scene in harsh, stuttering flashes. I felt my teeth sink into his shoulder, the hot rush of blood filling my mouth. Beside me, Emily clawed at his chest, her fingers digging deep into his skin. The dog barked frantically, pulling at its leash, but the man's screams drowned out everything else. His warmth seeped into me, dulling the hunger for a brief, fleeting moment. I turned to Emily. Her face was smeared with blood, her eyes still clouded but alive with something primal. We fed together, tearing him apart piece by piece. His screams faded, replaced by the wet, sickening sounds of flesh being ripped from bone. When it was over, we stood there, our bodies slick with blood, the man's lifeless form crumpled between us. The dog had fled, its leash trailing behind it. Emily looked at me, her head tilting again. The recognition was still there, faint but undeniable. This wasn't love. It was something else, something twisted and monstrous. But in that moment, it felt like we were connected, bound by the hunger and the carnage we'd wrought together. I wanted to scream, to claw my way out of this nightmare. But all I could do was stare at her and wonder how much further I could fall. The first one appeared the next night. Emily and I had just finished. A man in a suit stumbling from a bar, his tie loose around his neck. His screams were already fading, his body crumpled on the ground when the hunger in me finally dulled. I was wiping the blood from my face when I felt it. A shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. I turned, and there he was. He shouldn't have been moving. His chest was ripped open, his throat little more than a mangled red mess. But his head twitched, then turned toward us. His eyes were empty, the sockets ringed with blood, but something stared out of them. Emily tilted her head, mirroring his movement. A low sound came from her throat. The man stood, jerking upright as if pulled by invisible strings. My legs felt weak, shaking beneath the weight of what I was seeing. But then another appeared, and another. The woman from the gas station, the jogger by the park, faces I hadn't let myself remember, all shuffling forward, their limbs twisted. The sound they made, a low, gravely moan, layered and deep, wasn't noise. It was communication. And I realized the truth. They weren't individuals. They were connected, not to each other, but to the hunger. to me, to us. I looked at Emily, her blood-streaked face impassive, and I knew we were leading them, guiding them. Grace. The hunger stirred, roaring with purpose. I turned toward the dark horizon, where she was still running, still hiding. The horde moved with me, their jerking steps falling into rhythm. We stand at the edge of the hill, the town sprawled out below us like a patchwork of light and shadow. Street lamps flicker, faint and distant, their glow seeping through the trees. The hunger twists inside me, relentless, pulling me forward. Beside me, Emily twitches, her bloodied hand jerking at her side, her head tilting toward the lights. She growls low, her broken body still and yet coiled, ready. For a fleeting moment, something stirs, a memory, faint but sharp. Grace's laughter as she spun in the backyard, her hands outstretched to the sky. Emily leaning against the doorframe, smiling, her hair catching the sunlight. My family, but the hunger shreds it, devours it. I glance at Emily, her clouded eyes fixed on the town, her mouth twisted into something between a snarl and a grin. The bond between us is no longer love, it's need, endless, insatiable. The horde gathers behind us, their collective presence amplifying the pull. I feel their hunger like it's my own. Emily tilts her head toward them, growling in unison. There's no division between us now, just a single relentless instinct binding us together. The lights of the town seem closer, brighter. The scent of life hangs in the air, thick and intoxicating. The hunger whispers, louder now, surging with the weight of the others. The mantra swells in my mind, stronger than before. Grace, grace, grace. Then, music. It drifts up the hill, cutting through the cool night air. The horde behind me stills, their jerking movements halting as the sound reaches them too. I shuffle closer to the edge of the hill. The source of the sound becomes clear, a parade winding through the heart of the town. A line of floats glinting in the glow of street lamps. The faint murmur of a crowd rises and falls, a tide of laughter and cheers. A girl, perched high on a float, her silhouette framed by an arch of shimmering lights. She wears a crown, its rhinestones catching the light in sharp, brilliant flashes. Homecoming. The word slides into my thoughts like an echo from another life, a memory scraped raw by the hunger. The horde stirs, their murmurs rising into a single, unified sound, a deep groan that ripples through the trees like a storm wind. The parade below doesn't hear it, their cheers drowning out the first whispers of doom. Emily lunges forward, and the horde follows, their shuffling steps gaining momentum. The trees shake with their movements, the ground trembling as the mass of us begins to descend. The hunger in me surges, unrelenting, unstoppable. The distance between us and the town closes, the fragile tether of memory slipping from my grasp. Grace. The name whispers through my mind one last time before the hunger consumes it. The horde moves as one, and we descend the hill, the ghost of old Jeb Brown. Childhood memories of walking home from school on Halloween Day. Cool breezes under overcast skies. The scratching of dried leaves on the pavement as the wind pushed them by. They crunched under my feet and made a swoosh, swoosh sound as I walked through them. When I got home, I raked them up into mounds and cannonballed into them with a splash like crunchy water. My old Labrador retriever with his gray face would find the energy to join in the fun, pouncing on top of me with a vivaciously wagging tail. The neighborhood was always decorated for fall. There was nothing creepy or scary at all. Hay bales and scarecrows peppered the subdivision along with the old, dried-up corn stalks. Every house had a jack-o'-lantern. We'd spread out old newspaper over the table to carve my pumpkin and cutting off the top. I'd scoop out the sticky fruit and separate the seeds. Mom would wash the seeds and salt them up before baking them in the oven while I cut out triangular eyes, a nose, and a goofy smile with only a few teeth. A candle was always placed in the center, giving the pumpkins a ghoulish glow. Homework was done with haste. A shower was taken early. Dinner was served before dark. My costume was never anything fancy. A plastic character's suit with a hard-to-see-through plastic mask that was held on by a thin rubber band. Yet, I was proud of my costume, excited to be for one night the character I chose, all ruined by an overly concerned mom who demanded I wear a jacket. The streetlights came on and the subdivision filled with kids accompanied by adults. There were vampires and princesses, robots and witches. Some costumes were homemade, some were store-bought, some were extravagant, and some were cheap. None of us kids cared. It was Operation Candy. My parents released me like I was a hungry jackal looking for a carcass to feed from. Mom would always stay home to hand out the candy, while Dad double-timed it to keep up with me as I ran from house to house. The Fambros' house was always a good one. Their mom would dress up as a silly scarecrow, much like the one from The Wizard of Oz, and sit out on the front porch. She would ask us if we wanted a trick or a treat. If you answered trick, she would do cartwheels or sing and dance, something funny to entertain us kids. I'd pick trick just for a laugh. The Bedwells' home was my favorite. On their porch, they had a scarecrow they called Old Jeb Brown. It was made of denim overalls and a red and black plaid flannel shirt stuffed with straw, boots for feet, gloves for hands, and a jack-o'-lantern for the head. Inside the head, they put a speaker. Mr. Bedwell would sit on the couch inside and wait for trick-or-treaters to walk up and then scare them. Even though I knew it was coming, he always managed to scare me. They would always invite us in and tell us the story of Old Jeb Brown. Old Jeb once owned all the land the subdivision was built on. For many years, he lived a reclusive lifestyle on the edge of town. He rarely accepted visitors, and never when they were unannounced. He built a rickety barbed wire fence around his property and posted signs that read, "No trespassing. Violators will be shot on sight." He posted those about every 50 yards or so, according to the story. People, for the most part, took that warning seriously. However, every Halloween, there were those few who would bang on his door and yell trick or treat. Old Jeb would greet them at the door with a rifle in hand. People would go scurrying away. Jeb would always fire a warning shot to let them know to never come back. Late one night, on Halloween, 1953, a group of teens felt it was their place to teach Old Jeb a lesson in politeness. They snuck up his driveway, threw a flaming bag of poo on his porch, banged on the door, and hid. Jeb never woke to put out the flaming bag, and it caught his porch on fire. The teens who were hiding in the shadows ran off. Jeb died in the house fire. Mr. Bedwell went on to tell us that the following Halloween, those kids went missing, and that they weren't the only ones. There have been cases of missing teens on Halloween over the decades. He believes it was the ghost of Old Jeb Brown exacting revenge on bad kids on the anniversary of his death. As a young kid, the story did a good job of scaring me straight. But when I turned 13, it was just a bunch of malarkey. At that age, I hit a growth spurt and was too big to trick or treat. The little things like jumping in the leaves, carving jack-o'-lanterns, and the magic of autumn were lost on me. Frankly, I hated the season because it meant school was well underway. That year, Halloween fell on a Friday, and two of my friends stayed the night at my house. They told me there were other ways to have fun on Halloween than trick-or-treating. We waited until my parents went to bed. We grabbed toilet paper, all the eggs we had, and a couple ball bats. We snuck out of the house late that night. We found a neighbor's house with no lights on and threw toilet paper in their trees, covering it. We then egged their car using half the eggs we had. Then we destroyed their decorations and smashed their mailbox. A light came on in the house and we took off running, dodging behind another house so we wouldn't get caught. We found it all exhilarating, laughing at our antics. We took a shortcut through the yards to the opposite street, Mr. Bedwell's street. My friends saw old Jeb the Scarecrow and immediately wanted to ruin it. I told them I didn't want to mess with that house, that I knew the guy, but they didn't want to listen. They started with the toilet paper, just like the last place. Then they moved on to egging the front of his house. My one friend, Jimmy, grabbed a large landscaping stone from Mr. Bedwell's yard and threw it through his bay window. They turned to run, but Jimmy didn't get away. Old Jeb jumped up and grabbed him. Me and my other friend, Ricky, screamed in fright, but were not about to leave our friend. We started hitting the Scarecrow with the bats, but the bats didn't faze it. By then, the lights were on in Mr. Bedwell's house. He was furious, but ran outside to help Jimmy. The Scarecrow knocked Mr. Bedwell down and ran off with Jimmy. We chased old Jeb all the way to the graveyard. There, Jimmy started sinking into the ground, and the Scarecrow fell into a limp pile of clothes and straw. We grabbed a hold of Jimmy and pulled with all our might, but something stronger was pulling him down. We screamed for him to hold on, but the dirt was rising up over his face. His hands slipped from our grasp, and he was gone. We didn't have time to mourn or dig. The Scarecrow stood back up, alive, and stomped towards us with intent. We scrambled to our feet and ran, but not fast enough. Old Jeb caught Ricky and started dragging him down to the grave. I grabbed Ricky in a bear hug, hoping to keep him above the soil, but I started to sink as well. I let go of Ricky and climbed out. I looked at Ricky. I saw terror in his eyes, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to end up like him and Jimmy. I was scared, so I ran, and I didn't look back. When I got home, I quietly snuck back inside and went to my room upstairs. I looked out the window, and there it was staring up at me. I sat on my bed watching it. It never moved. Not until the sun came up and it collapsed into a pile of straw and clothes again. 30 years later, and I still have to lock myself in my house every Halloween night. The ghost of old Jeb Brown sits outside and waits, milk-fed. The town of Gord's Hollow was gaunt and undernourished in nearly every aspect. Its rickety streets laid out like a soothsayer's tangle of oracle bones, and its bedraggled buildings stood lean and haggard, much like the people that lived in them. The whole of it was hunched at the edge of a sea cliff, and mist rising from the crashing waves below hung everything above with a constant pallor. But there, right on the cusp of world's end, where the roar of the sea filled your ears, grew the only thing in Gord's Hollow that could be called hale and hardy, the gourd garden itself. It was this garden that made Gord's Hollow famous in our county. For generations, the emaciated people of the town had inexplicably produced gargantuan gourds that put all others to shame at the harvest festival. Their crooked-necked squash were taller than a man, their zucchinis large as coffins, but it was their pumpkins that drew so much envy. Huge and round and plump, it took 2 teams of oxen just to haul them. At the festival, the pumpkins loomed large over all the proceedings, so large it seemed they could swallow all other entries and have room left over to consume the judge as well. But their size itself was not the most striking element to their appearance, for the pumpkins were also of exceptional color. Their shells were a deep, vibrant orange, so deep and so vibrant as to almost be red. And though no one who was not a citizen of Gord's Hollow had ever seen the pumpkins cracked open, it was rumored the flesh inside was the scarlet color of new blood. It was an October day when I made my visit to Gord's Hollow. They had kept the secret of their pumpkins close for too long, and I was determined to discover their methods for growing them, by honest means or otherwise. Outsiders were uncommon in Gord's Hollow. My presence drew a searching eye from everyone in the streets. Nonetheless, I conducted myself straight to the garden's fence, a spindly wrought iron affair, and gazed through the bars at the great mist-shrouded fruits inside. "They're a sight to see, eh, stranger?" A voice called over the drone of breaking waves. The speaker was slim, as were all the townsfolk, but he wore a smile as he extended a bony hand. "Indeed," I replied, taking his hand, which I noticed felt almost as if it carried no flesh. "Would it be possible to get a closer look? I am a botanist, and I have never seen such magnificent plants." "Apologies, sir, but I don't carry the key." He nodded towards the chain wrapped about the gate and secured with a heavy lock. "Could you direct me to the person who does?" Again, my apologies, but the gourds are off limits to visitors. The man smiled consolingly, and I noticed his gums were nearly the same pale color as his teeth. "Could you perhaps answer questions about them then? I am very curious to know how you grow them to such prodigious size." "Folks that come here are always wondering about that." He lifted his narrow shoulders. "But truth is, there's no mystery to it. They're just milk-fed and tended to with lots of care." I knew about milk-fed pumpkins. It was a simple process. A small slit was made in the pumpkin's vine and submerged in a dish of milk. Capillary action sucked up the nutrients and accelerated growth. Many gardeners in the county employed the technique, but none achieved sizes like those I saw before me. I am astonished to hear that. I have myself grown milk-fed pumpkins, but not to such a result. Aye. Most folks aren't dedicated to it the way we are here. My interlocutor rubbed his arm as he spoke. We tend to our pumpkins day and night like other folks aren't inclined to do. It's just good gardening and the milk that makes them grow. But what about fertilizers and seed selection? Do you plant them under the full moon? Of course we do. The man laughed. But so does everyone else. My name's Jack, by the by. If you have designs on staying the night, my inn is just there. He pointed a skeletal finger towards a corner building with a signboard bearing his name. You'd be most welcome for supper and to stay the night. I thanked him and accepted his offer. At dinner, two things surprised me. First, there was not a single dish served made from the bounty just outside the door. No butternut bisque, no fried eggplant, not even a slice of pumpkin pie. The second was the tremendous appetite of the locales. From people so lean and weedy, I would have expected reticence at table, but they ate with a gusto I could not contend against. Platters of steak and liver disappeared before I could stick a fork in, and where the thin men put it all, I could not say. I spent the evening introducing myself and leading conversations to the topic of pumpkins, but the line I received from every man was well rehearsed. Milk-fed and careful labor, the villagers were ironclad in their conspiracy. Jack was good enough to give me his finest room on the second floor, with a window overlooking the garden. I had a spyglass in my valise, and, unsuccessful at dinner, I hurried upstairs to see what might be seen before sundown. The mist made it difficult to gather much in detail, but I was able to confirm the diligent care provided by the townsfolk. Through my lens, I saw at least a dozen at work among the vines, some using shovels and hoes, as would be expected, and others employing water cans. But my eye was drawn to some who carried crates of dark glass bottles. I noted that the umbilical vines of each gourd had an identical bottle attached. As I watched, the gardeners exchanged the attached bottles for fresh ones from their crates. Ah, the milk, I thought to myself. There was a knock at the door, and I slid my glass away before opening it. Begging your pardon, it was Jack, still rubbing his left arm. Word is, there's a storm blowing in off the ocean tonight. I'll have to close your shutter. He stepped across to the window before I could invite him in, closed and locked the heavy wooden blinds, and then was back down the hall. As the night progressed, there was no storm, but through the cracks in the shutter, I could see lamplight moving about in the garden, enough to indicate a great deal of activity. I pressed my eye hard against the cracks, but could make out nothing. I threw on my coat and decided it was time for stealth. There was no light in the hallway. As I felt my way along, my feet encountered an unexpected obstacle, and I found myself tumbling down the stairs. I lay in the dark moment. Then a match struck, illuminating the proprietor's face, his sunken eye sockets cast in shadow as he descended the stair towards me. What do you mean tripping up your guests at the top of the stairs? I said, a little sharp in my unsettlement. My apologies. It is my habit to wait on the landing in case my guests ring. I must have drifted off. Are you hurt? Upon examining myself, I saw, though my pant leg was not torn and I felt no particular pain, a stain of fresh blood had formed on the fabric just below my knee. The town doctor is just a door over, Jack said, seeing the blood. No need for that, it can't be much. I insist. I'll not have my guests injured and going untreated, not when the hurt is on my account. He grasped my arm with surprising strength and pulled me to my feet. The doctor's residence was indeed the next door over, and as I was somewhat forcibly escorted, I caught only a glimpse of the gourd patch. The gardeners were busy, their lamps glowing large in the mists, but I could not make out what duties they performed, though it seemed that some of them lay prone on the ground. The doctor was a short man, though still gaunt and hollow-eyed the same as Jack. He did not seem to have been sleeping before we knocked, and the lamps in his examination room were already lit. As we entered, he stepped quickly to the storeroom door, which had been left slightly ajar. Before he closed it, I saw its shelves were lined with dark glass bottles. A tumble down the stairs, you say? The doctor waved me towards a chair. We'll have you stitched up presently. I sat and allowed him to lift my blood-stained pant leg. I was surprised to see my shin revealed unscathed. The doctor and I both stared a moment. Then I looked at Jack. His left arm, the one he was accustomed to rubbing as he spoke, was held close against his body. I had not noticed before in the dimness of the lamplight that his elbow was dripping wet. "It's not my blood," I exclaimed, feeling foolish to be in the doctor's chair while another man stood injured. "It's yours." Jack looked down at his elbow. The doctor moved swiftly to his cupboard, from which he extracted a tourniquet, and then to Jack's arm, where he applied it with expert efficiency. As I watched the speed at which the doctor worked, I was first impressed by his talent, but secondly, I became impressed by Jack's composure. He stood undisturbed by his treatment, as if it happened every day. Then I wondered that neither man had taken a moment to examine the source of the blood, but proceeded as if they already knew where the laceration lay. as I considered this, a horror needled into my brain.
Milk-fed,
I whispered. Both men turned, their deep-set eyes glinting in the lamplight.
what was that?
Jack asked, his voice soft.
It's not milk. What you feed to the gourds, is it? Neither man replied. It's a wickedness, I said.
They seized me, one on either side. My apologies, Jack said. It would have been better if you'd not come to our town. With strength, I could not resist. The two men pulled me outside. The doctor lit a lamp, and I was pushed towards the wrought iron garden gate. The glow of workers' lights haloed the gourds as I was drug along. The crooked necks stood taller than my head, and the marrow squash were laid above the ground like unburied coffins. At the foot, the great orange gourd, I was forced to my knees. This is what it takes to grow them to such magnificence, Jack hissed as he bound me hand and foot. I waited to feel the bite of a scalpel in my inner arm. Instead, I was thrust face down, then it seemed, left alone. The lamplight faded, and I heard nothing but the droning of the waves below the sea cliffs. Ha! I laughed to myself, suddenly realizing what I had done. I'd come to Gord's Hollow to steal their pumpkin-growing secrets so I could beat them at the festival. But I had been seen through, and this was their prank to teach me a lesson. I raised my head to cry that I knew the game was up, but before my mouth could open, I heard a quiet sound, subtler than the distant waves. It was a sound of movement, like tiny curly vines worming over crumbly loam, a sound of searching, like a great umbilical stem yearning to be fed, and then with a prick of pain, a sound of gentle susurration, as of a baby's mouth sucking fresh, warm milk. Insatiable darkness. Not the kind that comes when you close your eyes. This is something else. Heavy, dense, like the world's been erased. It's pressing down, sinking through me. I can't breathe, can I? My chest should be moving, doing something. I don't know why I expect that. Then, something else. A noise. No, not a noise. A memory. I love you, babe. A woman's voice, warm, laughing. I can almost feel her next to me, see her face, smell her perfume, something like freshly peeled oranges. Gone. Just like that. I try to hold on to it, but it slips away like smoke. Something aches where the memory was, filling empty spaces, like something lost. Am I lost? No, I'm here. Here in the dark. Here in the earth pressing in on all sides. It is cold, deep in my bones, in my flesh. No, it's wrong. I feel something slipping, part of myself loosening, unraveling, sinking into the dark. I try to reach for it, to grab hold of me, but it's fading fast, sinking below the surface like a drowning man. I tell myself, I'm still here, I'm still someone, but it feels like a lie. Why can't I move? I try to lift an arm, a hand, anything, but everything's sluggish. My fingers claw at nothing, something below, above, heavy, settled. I should be moving, I should be. Then it hits me, clear and sharp, like a broken bone. I'm dead. I'm dead. I don't breathe. My chest is still cold, rotting. A surge of panic hits, a sensation I didn't know I could still feel. I close my eyes, or maybe they were already closed, and try to piece together bits of memory clinging to me. A bright day, a laughing face, a small sticky hand in mine. Gone. Gone before I can feel it. The weight around me presses harder like the ground itself is claiming me, holding me down. I don't know how I know, but I know I shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be this. I
I should be someone else. Happy birthday. Her voice echoed through me, through the dark. I don't know who she is, but the words cut through me, raw. I remember her laughing, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, her eyes catching the light in that way that always made me stop and stare. She'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "You're my forever." The words are faint now, slipping away, but the warmth of them lingers enough to hurt. I claw at the darkness. I don't mean to. I don't have to. My fingers curl through the dirt, tearing, dragging myself upward. My hands pull, dig, until I feel the damp, cold earth under my nails, grinding against bone. The part of me that still thinks cringes. The other part? It just keeps going. It's like I'm watching from far away, a thought pulsing through my mind. Get out. Get out. Not a choice, an order I can't ignore, from deep inside, where the human parts of me are fading fast. I don't know how long I claw, but the earth loosens above me, cold air seeping in, something other than the dirt. It's thin, stale, the first taste of the world outside, and it makes me feel alive. Alive and wrong. My head breaks the surface, and the night air hits me, sharp. I gasp, but the air scrapes through me like glass. The world is blurry, washed out under the moonlight. Grave markers surround me, jagged teeth against the sky. This is where I came from, where they buried me. I'm a corpse, crawling out of my own grave. The thought jolts, but it's distant, almost faint, like something I heard once and already forgot. Then that hunger, the one buried under memories, under voices, stirs, an ache deep in what's left of me, stronger than anything else. I push forward, not thinking, just moving, pulled by instinct, by the urge rising, undeniable. I'm dead. I'm broken. But I need something. I can't stop. I can't go back. The first thing I see, really see, under the sickly cast of the moon, is my hand, if you can call it that. It's a mess of sagging skin stretched over bone, torn in places, bits of muscle clinging to knobby joints, fingers twisted and rigid, blackened nails caked with dirt and something else I don't want to name. The sight, this thing I'm looking at, moving like it's mine, hits me like an electric shock, horror rushing up, strangling me. God, what am I? I try to scream, but all that comes out is a sound, low, guttural, inhuman, like an animal caught in a trap. My hand, my arm. No, this isn't my body. It can't be. The skin hangs in loose, rotting patches where it's not already gone, exposing sinew and yellowed bone. I look down and see my clothes, shredded, filthy, stained with patches that could only be. I shut down the thought, but the nausea twists inside me, pulling me towards something deeper. And then, as the horror swells, something else creeps in. It starts as a twitch, a need, deep and feral, like a slow burn crawling from my center outward. It coils in my stomach, my muscles, my bones, driving out everything else. A hunger, sharp, jagged, specific. I don't just want food. I want something else. Something alive. Number no, don't think it. Don't even say it. You don't want this. But I do. It's already there, growing, swelling, filling the hollow spaces inside until there's nothing left but the hunger. I try to push it down, to hold it back, but it's like caging fire. It flares, a force driving me to move, to push one unsteady, broken foot in front of the other, leaving damp streaks of earth where I walk. Ahead, movement, shadows, soft and slow. A person, bundled in a coat, walking the edge of the graveyard, flashlight in hand. I want to warn them, tell them to turn around, to run. Stop! But my body doesn't listen. I lurch forward. I'm watching, screaming inside, but I'm just a passenger, shackled here, while something else, some twisted, primal urge, takes the reins. My mouth opens, something wet and rotten drips down my chin, spilling onto torn clothes. But I can't stop. I'm close enough now to see him clearly, middle-aged, a little tired, maybe a little sad. He notices me, stops, frowning. Are you okay? His voice shakes, holding the flashlight up, illuminating my face. The light hits his eyes, wide with shock, as he takes in my face. His jaw drops, his lips tremble. Oh my God! Run! I want to scream. Run! But my mouth twists, letting out a moan, low and ragged, and it's enough to send him stumbling back, breath hitching in fear. He turns, but it's too late. My body surges forward, faster than I should be able to move, faster than anything this decayed body should manage. I catch him from behind, fingers sinking into his shoulders. I feel his body seize, the heat of him, the life. The hunger digs deeper, takes control of my hands, my teeth, drive into him, tearing at flesh like it's some kind of drug, some twisted ecstasy. He screams, his voice cutting through the night, but my body just keeps going. My teeth sink into his shoulder, the taste that hits my tongue. It's warm, alive. It fills me in a way nothing else can, something thick and metallic spilling down my throat, coating my mouth, and there's a sick satisfaction that follows, a relief even, like I've finally given in to something I didn't know I wanted. Stop. Please. God, just stop. But there's no stopping. My mouth pulls back, jaws snapping down, over and over, feeling skin and muscle tear, tasting the salt and the heat of his blood. His body twists, weak hands pounding against me, scratching, fighting, but his voice is breaking, giving way to soft, strangled cries. It's him and me, my body devouring his, my mind screaming in silent horror, torn between the repulsion and the craving, both so strong I don't know where one ends and the other begins. I taste his life fading, bit by bit, until he stops moving, limp beneath me. My hands fall to my sides, and I'm left there, panting, mouth and hands covered in his blood, insides roiling with satisfaction and disgust. The hunger settles, just a little, but doesn't go away. It sits there, dark, waiting. I know it'll be back. I look down at what's left of him, the bloodied mess that used to be a person. Pieces of him are scattered around me, stained on my clothes, smeared on my hands, and I feel nothing. Not horror, not revulsion, just emptiness. Number. That's not right. There's something else, something worse. I feel good, sated. A part of me is horrified by this, revolted. But that part feels so far away, drowned by the darkness. The hunger whispering again, like an old friend, like a promise. I don't know what I am anymore, but I know what I'll do. When the hunger comes back, I'll follow. There's blood on my hands, dark, drying, almost black in the moonlight. It stains the shredded skin, sinking into the folds and cracks as if it belongs there. I stare, feeling nothing, but then a name surfaces in my mind, just a whisper that strikes like lightning. Emily. It hangs there, echoing in the dark.
A face appears, flickers, blurs, her eyes dark and warm, framed by wavy brown hair. I almost feel her, the laugh that carries through time. She's saying something to me, but her voice is faint as if drowned. I love you. The statement hits me, and with it, shame, thick and heavy, curling around the hunger. And there's a weight pressing on my chest, suffocating, even though I know I can't breathe. Guilt claws through the numbness, pulling her words up from wherever I try to bury them. But it's gone, leaving only emptiness. My head pounds, trying to piece together fragments of who I was. The flashes come and go, sharper, harder to bear. The kitchen table, a family dinner, laughter, the smell of coffee, her voice as she hums, my wife, her hand on my face, the love so clear I could cry. Then it's gone, and I'm left alone in silence. The hunger stirs again, gnawing through the warmth of memory. Another face flickers into view. A child, a little girl, with a gap-toothed smile, clutching a worn teddy bear, her eyes full of trust. My daughter. I'm holding her hand somewhere bright, laughter filling the air. She'd giggle, squeezing my hand, saying, "Daddy, let's do this forever." And I'd smile, say, "Forever, baby." I feel it, warmth in my chest, something close to happiness, something I can almost touch. The thought stabs through, sharp and real, and the pain that follows is worse than anything I've felt. I want to scream, to claw this feeling out of me, but it's part of me, inseparable. My family, I need to find them. No. And that's when it hits, the full weight of it. They're gone, forever. I'm the one left here, trapped in this rotting shell, condemned to this endless gnawing hunger. A laugh bubbles up, ragged, hollow. I'm dead, but I'm still here, clinging to what's left of them in my mind, like some kind of pathetic penance. And yet, it'll never be enough to fill the void they left. The hunger stirs again, feeding on the pain, growing with each memory, each regret. But there's something else, faint, a whisper from the last remnants of who I was. You don't have to do this. I close my eyes, letting the memories wash over me, feeling their warmth, their pain. And for a moment, the hunger loosens, slipping back, and I'm just me, a person, a father, a husband. I can stop. I'm trying to cling to that sliver of clarity. I'll stop. But the hunger is there, lurking, waiting. I thought I could stop. I was wrong. The hunger comes back, an unrelenting, insatiable beast. It doesn't care about vows or memories. It rises, drowning every thought, every last shred of who I was. All I know is the hunger, expanding, filling me like rot spreading through flesh. I stumble forward, dragging my feet each step closer to the living. A faint glow of streetlights in the distance pulls me, and even as I scream in my mind to turn back, it's too late. My body isn't listening. A man steps out of a car, his whistling dying the second he catches sight of me. For a heartbeat, there's confusion in his eyes, just a flicker of disbelief. But I'm close enough to feel the warmth radiating off him. Run, I think, but he doesn't get a chance. My hands dig into his shoulders, nails scraping bone. He tries to pull back, but I clamp down my teeth, shredding through his skin. Hot blood gushes into my mouth. It's metallic and raw, filling me with a sick, animalistic thrill. He's screaming, a primal sound that echoes through the night, but it only fuels my hunger. My teeth grind deeper, ripping flesh, crunching tendon. His warm blood splatters hot and sticky over my hands,
down my chin. No, no. The words spill out, garbled, thick with blood. Somewhere inside, I want to stop, loosen my grip, let him go. But the hunger claws at me, relentless, drowning out any shred of mercy. My hands keep moving, fingers tearing, teeth sinking deeper until I'm lost in the raw, brutal rhythm, ripping, gnawing, consuming. I don't stop until he's just a bloodied, hollowed shell at my feet, a nightmare painted in red. I stagger back, wiping my mouth. I can still taste him, feel him inside like he's become part of me. I stumble away. The hunger gnaws, relentless, twisting inside me. I turn a corner, desperate to escape, but there's someone else, a woman walking her dog, oblivious. No, please, not again. I beg, but it's useless. My body moves on its own, drawn toward her warmth. Her screams slice through the darkness as my hands latch onto her, fingers digging deep, holding tight. I bite down, tearing into her shoulder, the rush of her blood searing through me. It fills me, but somehow only sharpens the hunger, that endless, insatiable need that nothing, not even flesh, can satisfy. Please, I think, let this end. Let me die. But the hunger, it stirs again. I feel it, low and insistent, an ache that won't go away. I close my eyes, hoping for darkness, for an end. But there's nothing but the hunger, whispering. And I know in the deepest part of me that this will never end. I open my eyes, hunger gnawing at my bones, and find myself on a dark street lined with familiar houses. I don't know how I got here. One moment, I was somewhere else, sinking into darkness. Now I'm standing in front of a house that feels known. The porch light flickers weakly, barely alive. My eyes trace the door, the windows, edges worn by years of something I can't name. A tightness clenches in my chest. I'm not supposed to feel anything. But this place presses on me, screaming from a fading part of me I can't reach. I step forward, feet dragging over concrete. My hand, what's left of it, finds the door. I feel the metal, cold, sinking into bone. The door swings open. Inside, the smell hits. Coffee. And something warm, like number stop. But it's too late. I know this smell, this place. My feet pull me inside, down the dark hall. I'm moving without meaning to, my body betraying me, dragged forward. The hunger, that terrible hunger, pushes me on. A sound from upstairs, a creak, tiny feet across carpet. I know what it is before I see. The hunger digs in, twisting me, urging me up the stairs. I don't want to go, but I can't stop. At the top, a door stands slightly open, a strip of light spilling into the hall. In the center of it, a small shadow shifts. Daddy? The word hangs in the air. Her voice, fragile, like a whisper wrapped in cotton. I try to say her name, to warn her, but all that comes out is a low, guttural growl. Her eyes widen. She steps back, dropping her teddy bear on the floor. Her lips tremble. Daddy? Her face blurs, twisting, fading. But there's something else, a flicker, faint, buried in what's left of me. Love. It's small, fragile, breaking through the cracks, just for a heartbeat. Her name is there, soft and warm. I remember her tiny hand in mine, her laughter, the way she'd look up at me with those trusting eyes, the way she'd curl up against me, safe, warm.
I know I would do anything to protect her. Anything to keep her safe. But then it's gone, snuffed out as the hunger roars up, an endless gnawing void swallowing everything I was, everything I am, shredding the last scraps of me, chewing up memories, swallowing every last trace of who I was. What's left of me drowns, dragged down, a stone sinking in a black sea. All I hear is the beat of her heart, pulsing warm in the silence. Run. Please, baby, run. But I lurch forward, teeth bared, hands reaching. The hunger takes over. I am gone. Bob Barker and the price of cookies. If Bob Barker was dead, he apparently was making the most of it. Bev checked the date on the magazine, guessing this bundle of BLTMs had gathered dust on some post office loading dock until some chuckleheaded awoke from their civil service coma. November 2024. She angrily brushed the white hair from her eyes as the early November winds buffeted the mailbox bank, then located the mailing label that cheapened the high-tone, heavy matte cover. Bev's old stylist had been a pretentious little bee with a stack of thick, chic, hoity town and countries in the waiting area, hoping to attract a classier clientele to her shitty little dump of a shop next to the campus Domino's that smelled perpetually of pepperoni and perms. Upshot was, somebody was going to have to get their hot goss at the Gas End Gulp or the Great Clips like a normal peon this month. Thanks. Beverly L. Tryon, 107 Oakline Drive, Millington, Illinois. Bev blinked and re-examined the other two cover boys. She was pretty sure Jimmy Buffett had sailed off into the sunset not too far back. Her hairball ex would have held a 3-day wake for the man if he hadn't already cracked his parrot head 3 Februaries back on his way from the VFW to the Moose after the last of the vets cut him off. The Legion already had turned off the spigot, and Lend canned the VA shrink halfway into intake, opting instead for his former wife's counsel to grow a set and just get over yourself. The third didn't ring a bell with Bev. Dimly familiar old black guy who sported at least a 5-pack, and who might have been handsome if, well, you know, whoever he was jamming out on some unnaturally white beach with the purportedly late Price is Right host and the patron saint of every midlife mess who'd ever dropped the mortgage on a PT Cruiser. By the way, apparently not J.D. Power's top pick for surviving a collision with anything much larger than a pop-top. She read on. Come on down. The 3Bs rock their second anniversary with Rita's and Rhythm in Paradise. Bob Barker raises the curtain on his mega canine rescue and personal crusade against poverty, while Jimmy Buffett and Harry Belafonte share their greatest hit island recipes, including the greatest cheeseburger this side of paradise. Bev frowned as a dead maple cottonwood cyclone teased her varicose ankles. She didn't care for Bob's new tarnished silver mane, and the alto sax was certainly a new one on her. Buffett wailed on his Martin guitar, part of a treasury of parrot head trivia she'd inherited along with the deed to a charred cube of Cruiser. Belafonte she now recalled from the piece-of-shit Beetlejuice movie her daughter had dragged her to after the divorce. Only good part of the idiotic, blasphemous thing, though now she recalled that when he wasn't slapping the bongos, Harry was a major troublemaker, one of those. I thought he was dead. Bev heard her own cervical pop as she whipped irritably around to find 109 craning over her shoulder. Though she'd ascertained ownership, Bev hugged the slippery magazine protectively to her chest. If I could just... The maddeningly tall old busybody next door mumbled as she attempted to reach around Bev's compact girth. Bev leapt back, and the amazing 6-foot woman scooped an impossible stack of catalogs and political flyers from inside her narrow Ace Hardware box. Bev suspected she was a libtard. She kept a patch of weeds and hay between their houses with a sign about how she was a friend of the butterflies. The city wouldn't do anything about it. Must be some kind of marketing campaign, 109 chirped, extracting her own sleek BLTN from the pile. What do you think that stands for? Probably like AARP, but I got that Saturday. Addressed to me. Weird. Maybe the O people sold my name to a mailing list. Bev's jaw tightened. Her neighbor tapped her ET forefinger on the mailing label. See that in the corner? 1/7. 7 freebies to lure us in, then the sales pitch. God, I thought Belafonte was dead. You know, my mom actually met him during one of Dr. King's marches. I'm freezing my ass off. Later, Bev grunted, scuttling across the street, narrowly averting a Domino's driver who apparently thought 30 minutes or it's free was a personal code rather than a desperate marketing play. The card floated to the olive shack as she slammed the front door shut against 109 and the others, those who'd wormed into the downtown fringe with their hippie gardens and rainbow flags and black Antifa Lives Matter and socialist blue yard signs as her neighbors cashed in one by one. Steadying herself on the doorframe, Bev bent painfully to scrape the cream-colored card from the filth and fibers. This subscription is a very special gift from Aileen. We hope you'll enjoy our thoughtfully curated articles, Bev snorted, and that truly BLTN enriches your understanding and perhaps even your life. With love, Aileen. Christ, Bev breathed, dropping into the threadbare Thomas recliner Len had neglected to include in the prenup. Aileen. There was a cousin Eileen on Dad's side, and 2 Count-em Ellens. One a little cunt on the Millington High cheer squad who'd made her senior year a nightmare. The other a bigger cunt of a cousin on Len's roster who she hadn't seen since her ex's 40th. Bev studied the 4x6, logo-embossed card. She realized the signature was handwritten. That itself seemed hinky. The magazine had slipped between cushion and arm, and Bev cursed as she worked it free and flipped open the stiff cover. Barker stood, arms crossed, in an improbably green field under an impossibly blue sky, surrounded by seemingly thousands of people each holding a dog. Every color and size, humans and canines, and breeds Bev had never seen in her 30-mile radius of a life, or that show with that scrawny little Mexican Cesar Milano whatever, all dogs go to heaven, but Bob Barker wants all transcendents to have a forever home too. See page 10. As Bev polished off her Marie Callender's meal to share Italiano meat lasagna with a dessert combo of Barker and Buffett, she was certain she'd been scammed on some elaborate and epic level. The old bait and switch, Len would have called it, probably. What was the phrase? Catfishing her for her Discovery card information, or Social Security. Bev's old pal, Wikipedia, had confirmed Barker had died in August 2023, 1 cent short of 100 of the Alzheimer's. Unless they'd discovered some miracle cure for dementia and rigor mortis, Bev suspected somebody with a computer had deep-faked up the entire photo spread like they had at the Capitol back in 2021. Buffett had nibbled his last sponge cake about a month after Barker had cashed in, and Belafonte's ticker had kicked out in April the same year. Bev read on, forsaking NCIS and then NCIS and so on, to peruse Kirstie Alley and Olivia Newton-John's favorite John Travolta films, Not What You'd Think, Latin Uhura Lady's new stage production of something called A Raisin in the Sun, and a selection of Tom Clancy's latest poetry. The new Harper Lee and Raymond Chandler novels were coming out, and Roger Ebert reviewed Robin Williams' upcoming comedy. Throughout were more references to transcendence, something called shepherding that appeared to be some kind of Big Brothers, Big Sisters deal for adults, and other weirdo jargon with a Scientology-type vibe. By 10:30,
Bev had bypassed the crossword for a last-page nightcap called BLTN Bites. At first, she recognized none of the 8 mugshots lined up along the bottom of the inside back page, and she fumbled her Walgreens cheaters on to see just what this shit was all about. I'd sacrificed my creativity for what I thought were family responsibilities when I actually had surrendered what I loved for family expectations. Now, I sacrifice nothing. Tina H. Shepherding has opened the doors that kept me in darkness as a husband and father. Sergio F. As I help heal tortured and guilty souls, the cries of the camps finally have begun to fade. Gerhard W. I'd tried to treat my wartime nightmares with liquor and marriage, except I was only chasing poison with poison and a toxic relationship. Leonard T. Bev paused at that last, scrutinized the accompanying thumbnail, a beaming, tanned, mustached man who appeared to have lost a good 40 pounds and a network of broken capillaries. Len seemed to be smiling up at her, not in contempt but with an infuriatingly pitying joy. Bev frisbeed the magazine across the living room. The second edition was in the mailbox Friday, slumming with the Miles Kimball/Harriet Carter catalogs and Subway and Arby's coupons. Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Janet Leigh, and big-boobed Kim Novak adorned the cover this time, sharing a jumbo bucket of popcorn under a theater screen filled with a doughy, inscrutable face. "We too!" the blood-red headline screamed. Hitchcock's blondes talk Weinstein, micro and macro aggressions, and traps and tips for tomorrow's Hollywood 2BIs. Bev's faintly glaucomic eyes did a full loop as she wondered what in the fuck a 2B was, and she turned from the trio of mailboxes before glancing about the dead, gray block and sneaking a peek inside 109. Beef and cheese and teriyaki chicken, Harry and David and Land's End catalogs, and 109's own copy of BLTN. Bev started toward 108's box, but a chipper voice shattered the frigid November air, and she tasted copper. "We have to quit meeting like this," 109 murmured, with a theatrically arched eyebrow, towering entirely too closely. "Oh, it's here. I was hoping. This would have been perfect for Thursday chemo." The WNBA's eldest draft pick looked more Panera's or Whole Foods than Arby's or Subway, pale and knobby and the color of chicken skin. "Shoot, I was hoping maybe you'd want mine," Bev lied, waving the glossy magazine. "You don't like it?" Uzdokas gasped. "I find it so affirming. You know everybody in there's dead, right?" "Everybody," Bev echoed. "Sick. I mean, what's the deal? Is this some kind of, what do they call it, cyber scam?" They don't have a website, I checked, so not really cyber. And if this is a scam, it's an awful expensive one, don't you think? Did you notice there are no ads, no information about subscribing? How do they pay for this whole production? You know what I think maybe this is about? Second chances, better choices, leaving regrets behind. You know what performance art is, right? I think maybe this is like performance journalism. Bev remembered how good fucking Len looked, considering his past stint as 240 pounds of flame-broiled road chuck. "I think you're batshit crazy," she snapped, struggling across the street with her slippery bundle with as much dignity as she could attempt to muster. Back in the cost-efficient, 60-degree comfort of her living room, Bev ripped through the December BLTN, scanning the names and faces of the dead. Cronkite, Winehouse, Plath, Walters, Shakur, Bogart, Cobain, Dr. King, Mr. Spock, the famous dead Kennedys building homes with Eisenhower, Johnson, Nixon, and a lanky and badly styled goateed fellow who, if Mrs. Werschnick's fifth-grade history served her, had taken one in the balcony 4 and some odd more ago. This time, Bev snatched the card mid-flight.
A gift from Aileen. Just between us. Aileen. The tone was indefinable, the silence that followed arctic. Bev stumbled backward against the recliner's arm. Nat, do you know any Aileen? Wasn't there an aunt on your dad's side? You never listened. Bev's daughter sounded a decade older, though it had been a little less than 3 years since they'd last exchanged a spoken word. What? You never listened. You couldn't hear anything through your anger and hate. You wouldn't hear anything. God Natalie's voice broke into harsh, strained sobs. The hell are you babbling about? Bev snapped even as her fingers trembled around the smartphone. Of course, it was us too. We wouldn't hear it. Him. Her. Oh, fuck. We thought we were the victims. We were the ones in pain. But you. Fucking you. Bev was now holding the phone in both hands, perched on the Thomas's arm as if suspended over infinite space. I'm not sitting here while you fucking cuss me out. You called me, Nat shrieked, gasping and now laughing murderously. After all this time, you called me to remind me what a poisonous, soulless, hateful old cunt you are. Well, her daughter panted. Well, I guess better late than never. Right? Right? The phone slipped from Bev's arthritic fingers as she fell back into the cushion, veined legs kicking, folded and trapped on her back like a tortoise wearing its carapace beneath the skin. Nat's unearthly rage and madness crackled somewhere in the deep green pile below, a blaze her mother was powerless to extinguish. Just between us. Before the evil took hold of him, it was their little joke. One more thumbprint cookie, an extra slice of Kroger cake or Baker's Square French silk before Mom scooped him up for supper. A reminiscence or chuckle her woke daughter would never have tolerated. We'll keep this our little secret, just between us. When Aiden finally confided in Grandma, he turned it against her, and she wasn't going to be extorted by a spoiled, sick 13-year-old. After it all began, after Aiden began spewing insanity, his vile inner thoughts and whinings, after the wheedling and fits and the pervert libtard shrink, and the constant trips to Chicago, and the financial realizations that threatened Paula's college, and the public displays and declarations, and finally the family's exile from holidays and even communications. The cookies and cake and the secrets had halted. When Bev herself banned the boy from her home, spitting his adopted pronouns back in his face, he'd called blubbering from one of his freak friend's phones to keep her from immediately ghosting him. He was alone. Dad would no longer speak to him. Mom had told him he was a selfish brat who'd made them outcasts. Aunt Nina told Mom, on speaker no less, that she couldn't have the girls exposed to such depravity, and the church in which Nat, Paula, and Aiden all had been christened had written to revoke God's blessing on the deity's behalf. Grandma, just between us, I kind of feel more and more like just killing myself. Bev also had received a Dear John, Luke, Matthew, Mark from the Second Millington Church of Jesus, though not from quite so far up the chain and merely punching her ticket to Tuesday night prayer and gossip and the coveted holiday potluck chairmanship. It had been months since Nat had so much as dropped her a check-in text, and the atmosphere at the Catholics' Thursday public bingo had dropped 20 or 30 degrees since Aiden's, parentally, unauthorized interview on the local AM morning show. Well, Bev had reflected, calmly, tonelessly, better late than never. Oh, of course, she couldn't blame herself. Like the literal drama queen Aiden had become demanding his true self, he didn't have, nor, as Bev had quipped, any longer had the stones to face the humiliation he brought down on his family, on his grandma. She had nothing to torture herself over, That was on the man with the swastika and Jesus tattoos who'd unloaded 7 slugs into the creature who was once her little guy in a Peoria LGBTQ health center lot to the tune of Genesis 1:27. Number it was the betrayal. Bev raged as she thrashed ineffectually to free herself from this final posthumous revenge, the effort sending jolts of pain up her left arm. He'd broken their pact, the little bastard. Or bitch. Finally, a young feminine voice pierced the growing fog. Bev blinked up at a figure perhaps not as lovely as Aiden had been handsome, but somehow far stronger. Better late than never, I guess. Miss? She'd been halfway down 107's weedy walk when she turned beaming to the gaunt, middle-aged woman gripping the porch rail next door, as if she were awaiting the first life raft. The long, frail neighbor woman was smiling uncertainly back, apologetic concern in her deeply sunken eyes. "Hello," the girl greeted in a rather low but somehow comforting tone. Instead of holding her stance in annoyed indecision or briskly crossing the scrubby turf between them to expedite the encounter, the young woman continued down the walk and took the sidewalk to 109. On closer examination, she was what some might call homely, slender but big-boned, crisp blue eyes, set perhaps a centimeter too far apart for standard, conformist beauty. But she moved with what Kelly's own mother might have called bearing, a confidence in who and what she was, and that whatever that was just, well, right. The girl waited at the bottom of the steps, inviting, inquiring, neither expectant nor demanding. "I didn't mean to disrupt your day," Kelly said. "I thought I might have heard something from, Beverly's a minute ago, and I just wanted to know everything was all right." "It is," the young woman smiled brightly. "So you're not... I'd understood she had a grandson." She did. "And please don't be sorry. I was coming to see you next. You've received your complimentary BLTN, Mrs. Grambling?" Kelly's head tilted before the smile returned. "Well, yes, though I'd have to say I'm at a bit of a loss as to what exactly it is I'm reading. Full disclosure, I'm in no position for long-term subscriptions." The girl looked to the sky with a grin. "I guess, if I had to say, we're about second chances, better choices, leaving all regrets behind. Options. I'm kinda out of those." Kelly sighed. "Mrs. Grambling, do you have a minute to discuss options?" "I guess I have that. And please, Kelly." Aileen, the Bruha and The Bruho Clay was driving west on I-270 towards St. Louis. The radio was off. He was alone with his thoughts. His father had died 2 days ago, and he was on his way from Chicago to the services, trying to reconcile his feelings on the road. He loved his father, but the old man was very difficult at times. He didn't really view Clay as his son. He viewed him as his private property, to do with as he wished. It was always football practice, baseball games, wrestling meets, karate lessons, and more. Sometimes Clay just wanted to hang out with his friends and play some video games, but there was rarely much time for that. His father spent 22 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. The red light behind the gas gauge lit up. He meant to stop and fuel up an hour ago, but he was lost in thought. Now he was in the middle of nowhere, and who knew where the closest gas station might be? Hopefully something would come up soon. He stopped thinking about his father as this practical concern overrode all else until it was resolved. He saw an exit sign ahead, Snaretown Road. Some little burg out here in the sticks, but there was a faded blue sign showing the standard highway gas station symbol. He exhaled and took the exit. At the end of the off-ramp,
He saw nothing but empty road running off to the left, but to his right, he could see what looked like a small village about a mile down the road. He turned in that direction. When he reached it, he realized that you couldn't really call it a village. It consisted of just 3 blocks of commercial space. Most locations were unoccupied, he noticed, with a small grid of houses just behind on either side of the road. There couldn't be more than a few hundred people living there in total. He saw the gas station up ahead on the right and pulled in. Fuck. The gas station was closed, yellow tape around all of the pumps. It looked like it had been closed for years. Why didn't they take that sign down on the highway exit? He didn't know if he could make it to the next gas station, wherever that was, with what was left in the tank. There was a convenience market attached to the gas station, and the lights were off inside. But the door opened, and 2 men came out. They were somewhere in their 50s, or maybe earlier 60s, and they were dressed alike in thick plaid shirts, denim jeans, and brown boots. They waved to Clay and approached his car with friendly smiles. Clay rolled down his window. "Hey there, what can we do you for?" Was there a nervous cast to their smiles? "I just pulled off I-270 for gas, but it looks like I'm out of luck here. Do you know where I can find the closest station?" The 2 men began responding at the same time, but then one deferred to the other. "Yes, sir. You want to just turn right back around the way you came, and if you continue west on the 270, you'll see an exit for, Williams Village Road, just a few miles down, and they've got a couple of stations there. Good luck to you now." They just stared at him awkwardly, and Clay thanked them and pulled out of the gas station back towards the highway, praying he could make it to Williams Village Road. The needle was right on E. He didn't remember the drive from the highway exit to that little village being so far, but he could not even see the interstate from where he was. He also didn't pass through any other towns or villages when he turned off onto Snaretown Road, but now he saw one up ahead. Just a little 3-block main street surrounded by some homes. When he arrived there, he saw the same vacant gas station with the yellow tape around the pumps. The place he just drove away from less than 5 minutes earlier. He tapped the brakes, and when he saw the 2 men standing there in their plaid shirts, he pulled in again and rolled down his window. The nervous smiles were gone. Now they just looked nervous, their faces somewhat ashen. The one who had provided the directions to Williams Village Road spoke up. "Hey there, partner. Did you get turned around or something?" He looked around. Clay had a very strange feeling in his gut. Not a good feeling. "I don't think so. I headed right back down this road towards the highway. I don't know how it could have possibly happened." The 2 men looked at each other briefly. "Well, there's a sneaky turnoff down there that basically loops you back around to here. I'm sure that's what probably happened. You wouldn't be the first. Tell you what, why don't you just make a right turn out of here and stay straight on this road until you reach the 270, and then you just hop on the westbound ramp. You'll be down there at Williams Village Road in no time." After a moment, he nervously added, "Go on now. Good luck." He looked around, and Clay thanked him and followed the directions, which were entirely uncomplicated. Once again, he followed the road back to the interstate, and once again, he drove for a few minutes and arrived back in that same small town with the defunct old gas station. The 2 men in plaid shirts were still standing there by the pumps, staring in his direction. Clay tapped the brakes and pulled in. This time, he killed the engine and stepped out. "Guys, what's going on here?" They stared at each other with grave expressions for a moment, and the one who had done all the talking so far continued to do so. He crossed his arms over his chest and looked down at the pavement. "Well, fella,
I'm afraid we have some bad news for you, and you're not going to believe it when I tell it to you now. But eventually, I'm afraid you will know that it's all true." He paused and took a deep breath. Clay's heart started beating harder. The man pointed up to some low wooded hills just beyond the patchwork of homes that made up the little village. "So, for as long as anyone around here can remember, there has been an old house up there in them woods that was home to an old woman and an old man. They came here from somewhere just outside of Mexico City many years ago. They lived way down in Chiapas before that. Old as they were, they lived on as other folks born. Well, after them lived long lives and passed away. The old woman and the old man just kept carrying on. They didn't come down to the village here often, but when they did come down, they always looked a little older, but somehow they were still carrying on." He paused and looked at his partner in plaid. "Charlie, you want to take over here? You can probably tell it better than I can." The other man cleared his throat. "Yeah, sure. So, as Marty was just saying, the old woman and the old man who lived in that old ramshackle house up there in the hills didn't come down here to the village too often. They didn't have to. Now, here's where you're gonna stop believing any of this. But it's true. They didn't have to come down here to the village because if they needed anything, they had a pair of twin gray wolves, and they would just send them down. Those two would get whatever they needed. They would just walk into a store, pull the items that were needed off the shelves, and then growl viciously at someone in the store. They didn't care who, until they packed up all those items and followed those wolves back to the old house up there in the hills." Charlie paused to gauge Clay's reaction to this. Normally, Clay would dismiss this sort of fairy tale stuff instantly, but his head was still spinning from what had just happened when he tried to drive back to the interstate, so he continued to listen, wondering where this was all going. Well, sometimes the old woman and the old man did come down to the village. When the weather was nice and when the 4th of July fireworks were in flight, they were sometimes seen walking slowly together, hand in hand. The locals who lived here for a while all called them the Bruha, her, and the Bruho, him. I don't know how that started. It's just what people called them. Maybe they introduced themselves that way at some time. Anyway, one long summer day many years ago, no one can say just how many, they came down into the village. They were walking slowly down this sidewalk right here when some drunk driver came off the interstate in a big old SUV looking for gas and more beer, and he swerved just enough to run the Bruha down. She was killed instantly, and the Bruho screamed in fury as the man exited his vehicle. Mere moments later, the twin wolves were there, and they had him surrounded, snarling with rage and snapping their teeth at him. The Bruho pointed down at the old woman, and without saying a word, the driver lifted her body and followed the old man back up to the old ramshackle house in the hills, the two wolves trailing behind. He paused there and raised his eyebrows, giving Clay a chance to ask any questions or express his disbelief. Clay just stared back at him, waiting to hear the rest of the tale. Charlie continued. "Well, that's when things changed around here for good. For starters, all of the usual deliveries that we received every week, food, gas, prescription drugs, retail products like clothing and shoes and such, just all stopped coming one day. That was the day that we woke up and found that drunk driver crucified by the side of the road just down there. He had a sign hung around his neck that read, 'Do not touch me,' and no one was brave enough to defy that warning. He stayed up there for almost a year, the crows picking the flesh off his bones. And then one day, there was a storm, and the crucifix was blown down. You can still see the remains of his bones in the tall grass over there. Anyway, After that, no one could leave. There were 188 people living here at that time. Any time that any one of us attempted to drive down towards the interstate and away from Snaretown Road, we ended up right back here, just like you did. Outsiders like you have turned up here over the years, and most of the time they were able to leave. But some, like you, found themselves unable to leave. No one knows why, but I assure you, it is real. You're with us now. I'm sure you seriously doubt all of this, but someday you will be buried here. Marty nodded, and Charlie paused again, and this time Clay was done listening to the story. He walked back to the car door. Look, I don't know what kind of scam or joke you're trying to pull here, but I think I've heard enough. I'm leaving now. See you soon, Marty said quietly and waved goodbye. He did not smile. About 5 minutes later, Clay pulled into the gas station again from the opposite direction. Marty and Charlie were still standing right where they were when he left. He put the car in park and rested his forehead on the steering wheel for a short time. Then he exited the vehicle. All right, what the hell is going on here? Charlie just told you. Clay lifted his chin. Okay, well, if there are no supplies coming into town, how do you all survive? What do you eat? Charlie said, come with me, and walked back into the convenience market. It was mostly empty, with the exception of a few chairs and a fold-out table with a deck of cards on top. There was also a cold case, which was almost completely empty, and one of those large freezer chests that most people keep in their basement or garage. Charlie lifted the lid. It was empty. Every morning, me and Marty come down here at 8 o'clock and we check the case. Sometimes there's enough food for everyone. Sometimes there's only half that. On some days, there's just nothing at all. It's almost always frozen dinners and canned goods, but sometimes we find a bag of apples or oranges. And when someone here in town is sick, we will occasionally find a bag of prescription medications. Not always. One day there was a chainsaw, and that afternoon we got hit by a nasty tornado that knocked trees down all around. Knocked down some power lines too, but the power stayed on anyway. We lost our phone lines, cellular signal, and internet connections when it all started, but for some reason the lights have stayed on and the plumbing still works. We just can't reach the outside world. No one knows why, and no one is willing to speak with the Bruho about it. He almost never comes down to the village anymore. When he does, he is always flanked by those two gray wolves. Clay tried to process all of it. The initial instinct of his rational mind was to call bullshit on the whole thing. But he also knew what had just happened each time he attempted to leave the village. He needed air. He stepped outside and leaned against the fender of his car, parked by the dead gas pumps. Charlie and Marty stayed inside and spoke to one another for a little while, and then they walked out and rejoined Clay. I'm sorry, partner. I didn't catch your name. Clay introduced himself. Well, Clay, we have lost many of our older neighbors over the years, and not too many new ones have arrived to replace them. The last one before you was Jimmy Gillis from Kansas City, and that was over 4 years ago. As a result, we have quite a few unoccupied houses where we can set you up. Charlie looked at Marty and said, I'm thinking Benny McCabe's place would do nicely. It's small, but he and his brother did a lot of remodeling work before it all started, and it's still in very good shape. Marty nodded. Sure. Come on, Clay. It's just down the block here. You can leave your car there for now. It will be fine. Not that you'll ever need it again. Neither of the older men chuckled at this. It was not intended to be a joke. Clay was just trying to make sense of it all as he followed them down the block to the house. He definitely hadn't given up hope of leaving here as soon as possible, but he didn't have a plan. He needed time to think. the house would give him some time to do this on his own. Charlie and Marty showed Clay around the single-story, two-bedroom home. It was nice enough. And afterwards, they walked around the little village for a while and introduced him to some of his new neighbors. Everyone was nice, but everyone was also just off in one way or another. They all seemed a bit haunted, a bit broken, and that was right there on the surface. You couldn't miss it. Afterwards, Clay pulled his car down the block and parked it in front of his temporary new residence. He pulled his suitcase from the trunk and brought it inside. Marty came by with a frozen pizza and 2 cans of soda for his dinner. That night, lying in bed, Clay never even came close to finding sleep. He stared up into the darkness and contemplated his situation, his reality. The more he thought about it, the less he believed it. He was educated and not given to belief in the supernatural. This had to be some kind of trick or illusion. He couldn't understand the purpose, but he didn't want to find out too late that he had been trapped into some weird sacrificial cult or something like that. As the hours went by, he became more and more sure of his conviction that this was not real. He thought about the half-mad people he had met while walking the neighborhood with Charlie and Marty that evening. He had no desire to remain here another second. There had to be a way out. And this story about the Bruha and the Bruho, it was all just too much to accept. This was crazy. He had to be at his father's funeral. He had to get there somehow. He decided to leave. He got up and packed his things back into the suitcase and walked out to the front door. When he opened it, a pair of very large twin gray wolves sat there on the porch, perfectly still except for their yellow eyes. He recoiled instinctively and took a step back. The wolves let out a low growl simultaneously, but remained still. Clay slowly shut the front door to his new home and went back to bed. He would not be at his father's funeral. He knew that now. He wasn't going anywhere. Delta 928, Captain David Starnes. Morning, Pete. How are you doing today? Co-pilot, Peter Markley. Oh, I'm good. Just glad I made it on time. Traffic was a bitch this morning. How are you, Captain? Starnes. Feeling just fine. Once I fly this turn, I have the next 3 days off, and me and Jenny are going out to Sedona to play some golf and enjoy the spa at the Hilton. Markley. Sounds nice. I'm on for the next 4 days at least. Starnes. Hey, do me a favor. I have to call home real quick. Ask Marcy to bring up some coffee for us, and then we can start with the pre-flight routine. We're scheduled to be nose up in about 20. Markley. Will do, Captain. Pause. Hey, Marcy, can you please bring up 2 cups of coffee? Muffled response. Thanks. Get one for yourself, too. It's on me. Starnes. Hey, Jenny. I just wanted to let you know that I didn't have time to get the laundry into the dryer. The washer was still running when I had to leave. Just wanted to let you know. I'll call you when we touch down in Chicago. Love you. Markley. Well, ain't that sweet. Senior Flight Attendant Marcy Nichols. Here you are, gentlemen. Can I get you anything else? Starnes. Thanks. I'm good. Markley. Same here. Thanks, Marcy. How are we looking back there? Nichols. We're almost ready. Just a few more passengers getting settled. We should be able to do the final cabin walkthrough in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Markley. Sounds good. We'll be right here waiting for your thumbs up. Nichols. Be back soon. Dead air for 32 seconds, with the exception of a brief cough. Starnes. All right, let's check it down. Auxiliary fuel pump. Markley. Off. Starnes. Flight controls. Markley. Free and correct.
Starnes. Instruments and radios? Markley. Checked and set. Starnes. Landing gear position lighting? Markley. Checked. Markley. Altimeter. Starnes. Set. Markley. Directional gyro? Starnes. Set. Markley. Fuel gauges? Starnes. Checked. Markley. Trim? Markley. Set. Starnes. Magnetos? Markley. Checked. Starnes. Engine idle? Markley. Checked. Starnes. Flaps? Markley. In position. Starnes. Seat belts? Shoulder harnesses? Markley. Fastened. Starnes. Parking brake? Markley. Off. Starnes. All right. We are good to go. 24 seconds of dead air. Markley. You heard the latest on Kendall? Starnes. What a mess. It wasn't just alcohol, you know. He tested positive for cocaine too, and they found some in his suitcase. Markley. I heard his wife left him after Delta shit-canned him. What the hell happened to that guy? Starnes. Who can say? Kendall was a solid pilot and a good enough guy most of the time, but he definitely has a short fuse, and he likes to drink. I saw him deck a guy in the bar at the Sheraton in Atlanta one night over something that was really nothing at all. I kept my distance from him after that. I wasn't really too surprised when everything blew up that day, to be honest. Seems like he's just in a tailspin now. He was in jail until just a couple of days ago. Out on bail now, I heard. Markley. Yeah. I feel bad, though. He seemed like a decent guy to me, but I couldn't let him take off that morning. He literally stumbled into the cockpit, reeking of booze, slurred speech. He fell asleep about a minute after he took his seat. Miranda was the senior flight crew member that day, and she noticed it right away. Starnes, you did the right thing. I wouldn't give it a second thought. Markley. Yeah, I know. I just feel bad for the guy. Starnes. Don't? Not your problem. How are we looking back there? Markley. Marcy's walking this way now. They look like they're all settled in. Nichols. Okay, guys. We are all set. Markley. Thanks, Marcy. Ready for takeoff. Starnes over cabin intercom. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard Delta Airlines Flight 928 from Phoenix to Chicago O'Hare. Our flight time today should be 3 hours and 22 minutes. The weather looks good the whole way, so it should be a smooth flight, but we will notify you if we expect any turbulence. Your flight crew members will be coming through the cabin with an assortment of snacks and beverages once we level off. We'd like to thank you for flying Delta Airlines. We are third for takeoff, and we should be in the air shortly. Sound of jet thrusters increasing and decreasing for next 6 minutes and 14 seconds. Muffled dialogue between pilot and co-pilot. PHX Tower. Air Traffic Controller. Mike Reynolds. Over radio. Delta 928. You are clear for takeoff. Sound of increased volume of jet thrust for next 12 minutes and 35 seconds. Starnes. All right. We are up and running. Activating autopilot. Dead air for next 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Reynolds. Over radio. Delta 928. Please adjust your altitude to 32,500 feet. Markley. Copy. Descending to 32,500 feet. Dead air for next 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Markley. How's that course at the Sedona Hilton? I've played a few of those courses out there, but not that one. Starnes. Ah, you know. They're all kind of the same. Pretty wide open.
The greens are usually pretty fast though, so that can hurt you. It's nice though. Well maintained. Markley, I gotta get out there next time. Haven't played much this year. I'm scared to find out where my handicap really is right now. At least an 18. Starnes, chuckling. I brought in a 78 with 4 birdies at Sun Valley last week. Markley, nice shooting. You gotta teach me how to keep it in the fairway. My drives are all over the place, I swear. Dead air for next 54 seconds. Starnes, this is my 3rd turn in the last 24 hours. All right with you, if I catch a little shut-eye for a while? Markley, no problem, Captain. I'll rouse you back up if necessary. Starnes, thanks, Pete. Dead air for next 54 minutes and 22 seconds. Sound of knocking on cabin door. Sound of door opening. Nichols, gasping and speaking quietly. I'm so sorry. He made me open the door. He has a knife. Former Delta Airlines pilot, Marcus Kendall. Enough. You've done your part. Just give me all those little whiskey bottles and get back there and keep everything cool. If I hear one sound near that cabin door, everyone is going to regret it quickly. Remember, if I kill these two, then I'm the only one left to land this plane. Overlapped with sounds of motion, as well as inaudible comments from Starnes and Markley, followed by the closing of the cockpit door. Starnes. Marcus. What the fuck? What is this? Kendall. This has nothing to do with you, Dave. I'm here to see Pete. Here. Take this, though. Sounds of a struggle followed by painful gasps, cries, and heavy breathing for next 18 seconds from Starnes, shouting from Markley. Markley. Jesus, Kendall. What the hell are you doing? Stop. Kendall. You better get back into that co-pilot seat before you get hurt, Pete. I think we both know how a fight between me and you would end, even if I didn't have this knife. And Delta suspended the federal flight deck program 3 months ago after that incident in Salt Lake City, so I know you don't have a gun in this cockpit. Besides, I'm here to speak with you. This doesn't involve Dave. He was an asshole anyway. I need this seat. Sounds of seatbelt unclicking, followed by a thud. Kendall. Shit. Look at all the blood in this seat. Give me your jacket. I gotta wipe this up a little. Markley. How did you even get on this flight? How did you get a knife on board? Kendall. I worked for this airline for 17 years, Pete. You don't think I know how to get around? You don't think I know some people who will help me out if I hand them 500 cash? Baggage handlers make shit for pay, you know? It's a pretty thankless job. Those guys aren't exactly rocket scientists. Dead air for next 16 seconds. Markley. Christ, Marcus. What are you doing? Kendall. I came to talk to you, Pete, about what you did, and don't even think about triggering that handset. God help me. If I hear a 7,500 squawk come out of your mouth, I'm gonna cut off your right thumb. Don't test me. Look at Dave down there. You think I'm fucking around? Markley. I won't. I swear I won't. Kendall. Good. This won't take long here. Looks like we will be over Denver in just a few minutes. Markley. Why Denver? Are you gonna land us at DIA? Kendall. Not exactly, but close. We'll get to that. First, let me ask you something. You are a licensed and qualified pilot with plenty of experience flying the Boeing 737, yes? Markley. Yeah, sure. Not as much as you, but yeah. Kendall. So, on that morning when you called security to come into the cockpit to wake me up and drag me away, leading to me ending up in jail and losing my job along with my wife and 2 kids, you could have just covered for me, right?
Markley. Hey, you know the airline's policies. Plus, the flight crew already knew you were in no condition to fly. If they call security before I do, then I'm in it with you. Kendall. Yeah, so you just decided to ruin my life instead of taking that chance. That's what I thought. You are a little pussy, Pete. Do you know that? I bet you've been a little pussy for your whole life. Markley. Marcus, we're losing altitude fast. We are well below 20,000 feet, and we are way off our flight path. Dead air for next 22 seconds. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 15,000 feet. Markley. Marcus, you need to pull up right away. Dead air for next 14 seconds. Kendall. You know what, Pete? I don't really care what you have to say. I just wanted to be here with you for the end. I was originally planning to fly us straight into one of those high sheer cliffs up in the Rockies, but then I came up with a better plan. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 12,000 feet. DIA tower, air traffic controller. Miles Cordry, Delta 928. We are showing you coming towards downtown Denver and descending below 10,000 feet. Are you in distress? Do you need us to clear a runway for you at DIA? Kendall, kill that speaker. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 8,000 feet. Kendall, I know you can't kill that one. Anyway, rather than just pushing us into a mountain face, I decided it would be more fun to do this. Sound of increased wind shear, muffled screaming coming from the cabin. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning! Altitude! Warning! Altitude! 6,000 feet. Markley. Jesus, Kendall. Please pull up on that stick. We are almost nose down, and we won't be able to pull out of this dive if you don't do it now. Please, don't do this. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 5,000 feet. Kendall. You see that down there, Pete? You see that? I timed it pretty damn good, didn't I? That's downtown Denver right there. I don't know if I should target one of those tall buildings or try to put us down on a busy street. I guess I'll just have to play it as a last-minute decision. You got a preference? Markley. Dear God, Marcus. No. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 3,000 feet. Kendall. I was considering it, and I just thought it would be better to put us down here rather than up there in the mountains. This way, there will be some good collateral damage and lots of great fiery video reels for the news. People love watching other people die in horrific ways when they watch the news, you know. That's basically what they tune in for, mostly, Pete. Let's give the people what they want today. Markley. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and blessed art. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 2,000 feet. Kendall, over cabin intercom. People, you might want to buckle up and return your seats to the upright position. We will be making an unscheduled landing in downtown Denver in about 30 seconds, and I think it's going to be a rough one. Markley. And blessed? Blessed are thou among, gasp, women, and blessed is the fruit of. Automated voice from instrument panel. Warning. Altitude. Warning. Altitude. 1,000 feet. Kendall. Open your eyes, Pete. Open your eyes. You don't want to miss this. Look at all those cars and people down there. We are going to be front page news. Here we go. Here we go, Pete. Count it down with me. Come on now. 3, 2, 1. The captives.
I have been a prisoner in this camp for more than 1 year. Many of us have died, mostly at the hands of our captors, but some from disease and trauma. Somehow I have survived, but it hasn't been easy. They beat us mercilessly today with leather straps. At least 4 men surrounded us and whipped us. They yelled at us, "Move, you stinking beasts!" They made us run into a wooden structure, then locked us in. I was afraid they would light the structure on fire with us locked inside. But whipping is not the worst. One of the men used a red-hot iron on one of us. I will never forget the screams of agony from that poor chap. It left him with horrible burns. He died soon after. I would estimate there are about 100 of us in this part of the camp. There is a big turnover, with new inmates showing up daily. About every 5 days, about 10 inmates disappear, and 10 new ones are brought in. We are given very simple food to eat, usually either a slurry of corn or a bucket of fetid mush. The captors often walk back and forth, laughing at us as we try to eat. Most of the time, we have to squeeze our heads through the bars on our cells in order to get to the food. The beatings and torture are bad, but there is something worse. Several female inmates came into the camp pregnant. When they gave birth, the men in charge immediately took the little one away, not even giving the mother a chance to see or bond with it. I can't think of anything more cruel. A few days ago, they came into our barracks and grabbed 4 unfortunate inmates. They used handheld electrified clubs and drove these 4 chaps out and into a separate building. We heard them screaming. But soon after that, there were 4 loud thuds, and then there was silence. One of our informants claims he witnessed the goings-on in there. He said he saw our compatriots hanging upside down by their legs, with their throats slit from one ear to the other. When word of this spread through the camp, there was a palpable wave of horror and panic. Detailing all the brutality and torture we have experienced seems like wasted energy. No one listens to us. There doesn't seem to be any end to this existence or hope for the future. Many of the inmates show signs of depression and severe anxiety. One inmate had been very quiet, but suddenly threw himself against the electrified fence, dying right there. The captors left him standing in his death, leaning against the fence with the full current flowing through his body, his legs twitching and spasming. We suspected that leaving him there was a message to us, not to disobey or try to escape, or that same type of destiny awaited us. Yesterday morning, a very important man visited the camp. We knew he was important because of the way he was dressed. Most of the workers in the camp wear casual clothes or military-style tactical outfits. This fellow was decked out in a 3-piece suit and had a leather overcoat slung loosely about his shoulders. He carried some type of cane or stick. A rumor spread quietly amongst the gathered that this man might be the one they call the Angel of Death. He had us line up for inspection. Any inmates not accurately in line met with an electrified club, ensuring obedience. While we were at attention, he strolled up and down the row, pointing his cane at a few of the inmates he favored. His assistant wrote down the chosen inmate's number, and once he left, those selected were taken away and led into the back of a large truck, never to be seen again. I sometimes stand quietly outside the barracks, and I can see life way off in the distance. There is a park not far from here. One can see people walking their dogs, picnicking or bicycling happily. I can even hear the laughter of children as they run through the park with their parents chasing after them. How beautiful, I think, would it be to stroll in a park, saunter down to a babbling brook up in the hills, or eat peacefully without the fear of violence. I know it's just a matter of a brief time until my life comes to an end. I've lived this nightmare existence longer than I expected. When I first arrived,
Other inmates told me I probably wouldn't last a month, but I have seen many come and go to a fate unknown. It would be all too easy to give up all hope. But when all seems lost, one still has the right to dream. That is something they can never take away from us. My dream is to live long enough to see an end to this incarceration and torture, and perhaps even get home to my family, if they still exist. There doesn't seem to be any hope of escape. The camp is too cleverly constructed for that. In fact, in some inmates, there seems to be almost a sense of resignation and acceptance of their tragic existence. I believe they call that Stockholm Syndrome. Generally, our captors do not engage us in conversation or ask us anything. They usually just walk by as if we don't exist. When we moo, they don't seem to understand what we are saying. I suspect they would at least try to communicate with us if we were human beings rather than cows. But today, uncharacteristically, one of my captors stopped at my cage to chat with me. He was one of the youngest of the men and sounded sensitive and caring, as strange as that may seem. But what he said really confused me. He mentioned that he doesn't eat meat and that he doesn't agree with the use of animals for food. I really didn't understand what he meant by that. After all, what is meat, Sinister Wish? Tom Williams walked into his office party, and it looked so festive. The buffet was unbelievable. It was Christmas Eve, so it was bonus time for all the employees. Tom's top 3 were in attendance. Mr. Williams, Tom, started his department chain by hand in the hills of Arkansas. Before Tom, it was only the big box stores. He broke the mold, though, and now these 3 were in control. The company put together this party to honor the 3, and everyone was dancing, drinking, and having a good time. As he looked around the room, he only saw greed, lust, and entitlement that he had created. The 3 stars of this horror are Angela Williams, president of Wilmart, and Tom's wife, Richard Buckman, Tom's vice president of Wilmart, who is also his childhood friend, and Thomas Williams, Jr., the chief financial officer of Wilmart, and Tom's oldest son. Now that we know the setting, this psycho Christmas special will have a moral somewhere inside of it. Maybe? Let's dig into the meat potatoes of it. Maybe some raw steak or a lamb or 2, ha 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 or ho ho ho. Tom was just standing by a table near the back of the room, and he noticed a man that just walked in. He was dressed like Santa. He was probably in his 60s and skinny as a rail. He had the long white beard, but that's where the similarities between him and Santa ended. This guy smelled of booze and only had maybe 2 teeth in his mouth, probably because of drug use. He was also barefoot, and his feet were old, weathered, and cracking, and his hands weren't much better. We will call him Dirty Santa, the gift giver. He walked in and the music stopped. All the partygoers' eyes were trained on dirty old Santa. Some of them looked amused, some terrified, some disgusted. Dirty Santa had his bag of goodies, walked up to Angela, reached in and handed her 3 wrapped presents. He did the same with Richard and Thomas Jr. After he handed out all the gifts, he spoke in a deep, raspy voice. "Do not open the gifts until I tell you it's time." Dirty Santa motioned to the DJ to start the music. The party started again, but no one really moved. Dirty Santa went to the buffet and began to dig through all the food using his dirty, cracked hands, laughing, dancing, and enjoying the food. He looked like he had not eaten in a while. Screech. The music stopped, and Tom Sr. stood up. "What is going on here?" asked Tom. "It will all be explained, Mr. Williams, after all. It was your Christmas wish," said Dirty Santa.
As Dirty Santa shoveled a lobster tail in his mouth, everyone's phones began to ding, except Tom Sr.'s phone. His remained silent. "Who are you? Who hired you? Why are you here?" asked Tom Sr. You will see," said Dirty Santa. Everyone was looking at their phones. They read, "Welcome to the Williams Christmas party. It's to die for. Have a great time. Merry Christmas." "The festivities are about to begin," Dirty Santa yelled excitedly. "We are going to play a game. The 3 people who you are here to honor will be contestants. For every answer they get correct, everyone in the room will receive $10,000. Merry Christmas." Everyone began to clap a cheer. This was going to be the best Christmas ever. They all began to chant, "Mr. Williams, hooray!" Tom Sr. decided to sit back down. Obviously, this was planned. Whoever had hired that Dirty Santa was definitely getting fired. The phones dinged again, except Tom Sr.'s. They read, "Do you want to play this game? Once accepted, the game cannot stop until the questions are all answered correctly from all 3 contestants. Check yes or no. The vote will either start the game or end it. The timer starts now. You have 3 minutes. Merry Christmas." Everyone was quick to vote, except the 3 contestants. They started to whisper among themselves. Ding. "Okay, the vote is in, and the game starts now. Rules will be presented, and remember, be careful what you wish for. Santa is always listening. Merry Christmas." At that moment, in came a flood of elves surrounding everyone at the party. Question number 1 is for all 3 contestants. As a group, what is the one wish that all 3 of you can agree on? You have 2 minutes to answer. Remember, if you're wrong, then no prize will be awarded till it is answered correctly. "Timer begins," Dirty Santa announced. Everyone's eyes were on Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr., and they moved closer so they could hear the contestants. Angela says, "I know the answer. What is something we all want?" "Money. Lots of it." "Yes," said Richard. "Yes," said Tom Jr. They type in their answer. "Money and lots of it." Ding. "Correct," yelled Dirty Santa. "Open your gifts now, and everyone in attendance, check your accounts. Merry Christmas." Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr. opened their gifts, all keys with numbers on them. Everyone at the party starts to cheer. They are all $10,000 richer. Ding. Those keys go to safe deposit boxes with millions in cash. Merry Christmas. Now on to question number 2. Who is the one person you lust over most? Remember, answer truthfully or there will be consequences. You have 2 minutes to answer. Audience has a chance at 30,000 here. There will be 3 different answers. Merry Christmas. The party erupted. "Hooray, Mr. Williams!" All 3 contestants looked nervously at each other. Richard's wife was not in attendance, nor was Tom Jr.'s girlfriend. What were their answers? Angela looked over at Tom Sr. and he sneered back at her. He knew that he was not her answer. Ding! Timer went off. Let's start with Angela. She answered, Tom Sr., incorrect. The elves moved in and formed a tighter circle around Angela. One elf walked up with a meat cleaver, and another walked up to her with a chair and a small block. They sat her down, took off her shoes and stockings, and put her foot up on the block. In one swift motion, the elf chopped off her a little toe. She began to scream. Dang! Now it's Richard's turn. He answered his wife, Sally. Incorrect. They moved the block now to Richard and sat him in the chair and chopped off his little toe. Dang! Finally, It's Tom Jr.'s turn. He answered Judy, his girlfriend. Incorrect. They moved the chair to Tom Jr. He tried to fight, and more elves came to hold him down. Tom Sr. stood up, and 4 elves forced him back into his chair also. Tom Jr.'s yells echoed as they chopped off his baby toe. Let's try question number 2 again. This time be truthful. Bad news, audience. Your reward drops $2,500 every time they answer incorrectly. Time resets to 2 minutes. What happened next, I could not predict. I had no idea the level that humanity would lower itself to until now. We shall continue. Boo! The guy in the back of the crowd yelled. Richard, we all know you're screwing Tom's wife. Other guests continued to yell too. Tell the elves the truth. We want our money. Tell them the truth. Everyone knows that Tom Jr. is gay. Ding! No answers, contestants? The elves raised their meat cleavers again, taking another toe from each contestant. Now the crowd is really getting upset. Tell the truth now. We have all lost 15,000. You suck. I will take more than a toe, said another guest. Well, it seems the partygoers already know the answers. Now you have 2 minutes to try again, and remember, you only have 8 toes left, and then we move to other body parts. Merry Christmas. The elves handed the contestants their phones as they frantically typed. The crowd was really becoming vocal. Tell the truth, scumbags. I hope they kill you. We want our money. Tom Sr. looked out, and all started to make sense now. He knew all of what was going on with Angela, Richard, and Tom Jr. His wish, though, was very evil. Had it really come true? Ding. We have our answers. Angela first. Richard Bachman, correct. Open your gift. Guests, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. The room erupted. Everyone was $5,000 richer now. Angela went to open her box. It was larger than the others' boxes. As soon as she opened it, she began to vomit. It was Sally's severed head, Richard Bachman's wife. Ding! Richard's turn. Angela Williams, correct. Open your gift. Guests, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. The room was on fire, another $5,000 in their accounts. Everyone was back to drinking and partying again. Richard went to open his gift. It was his wife, Sally's ring finger, with her wedding band still on it. Ding. We are on a roll. Tom Jr.'s turn. Jimmy from the mailroom. Correct. Now open your gifts, and guests check your accounts. Merry Christmas. Now this party was really exploding. Kind of intriguing how the contestants have become the spectators, and the guests became the stars of this party. Tom opened his gift. It was a picture of his girlfriend fucking the neighbor. Ding. Now for the final question of the game. This question will have a bonus of an extra $10,000 attached if the contestants answer correctly the first time. Timer set at 2 minutes. Question: have you ever killed anyone, and who? Merry Christmas. Okay. Now this was insane. How could they know what they were all thinking? How could anyone know their dark, sinister secrets? Was he real? They couldn't tell or they would go to prison. The crowd was shouting again. I had no idea the level this crowd was going to go for money. The timer was winding down. Will they tell the truth or not? The crowd was chanting, "Tell the truth." If you lie, I'll kill you myself. You are all scumbags. Ding. First up is Angela, and her answer is yes. Correct. $10,000 to every guest. Now, Angela, who did you kill? Your mother-in-law. Correct. An extra $10,000 to all the guests. Now, Angela, open your last gift. Guests, check your accounts. Merry Christmas. Now the room was silent, except for Tom Sr. You didn't. How could you? How could you kill my mother? Cried Tom Sr. Kill her, murderer! Chop off her head, the crowd chanted. With shaky hands, she opened her last gift. It was the bottle of pills she put in her mother-in-law's drink at Thanksgiving. No one suspected an overdose. It was just assumed she died of natural causes at her age. Ding. Richard's turn. He answered, yes, correct. $10,000 to all guests, and now for the bonus. Who did you kill? He answered, Timothy. Correct. Another $10,000 for everyone. Now open your last gift. Timothy was Tom and Richard's childhood friend, who died in a hunting accident. Richard opened his last gift, and it was a picture of the three of them the day before they left for their hunting trip. None of the guests cared any longer. The joy had turned into rage. They were chanting, "Kill them! Murderers!" Ding! Last on the list of tonight's game, Tom Jr. Will he answer correct or lie? He answered yes, correct. Now for the extra $10,000. Frankie, Rebecca, Little Ricky, and Jimbo Silverstone. Correct. One last gift to open. Merry Christmas. Tom Jr. was scared to open it. It was probably something horrific. His father was yelling now. You killed that family, Thomas? What the fuck? That was you? You were the drunk driver? Tom Jr. reluctantly opened his gift. We have a bonus round. $50,000 for everyone tonight. In Tom Jr.'s last present is a revolver. This crowd has the chance to vote on whether to make Thomas Williams Sr.'s wish come true. Should Thomas Sr. kill these three, or should he not? Let's vote. 2 minutes on the timer. Merry Christmas. Now it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Only the sounds of the smartphones and the whispers of the three murderers. Ding. Votes are in, and it appears that the decision is unanimous. These three will die at the hands of our host, Tom Sr. If he does it, a $50,000 bonus will be added to all your accounts. Thanks for being part of this year's Williams Christmas party. Merry Christmas. Pop, pop, pop. A noble death. The end has got to be close now. My end. The end of a life. I still had hope not that long ago, but beaten down, tortured, abused, and humiliated. Not anymore. I lie here in the dark and can only wonder what I have done to deserve this cruelty, and wonder what comes next. This makeshift graveyard is so cold. By the few dim lights, I can see the hundreds, maybe thousands of others, just like me. More are brought and dumped here every day. We cling to life with whatever little bits of energy we have left. 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, I've lost track of the days. My life was relatively normal. Yes, it was culling season, that dreaded time that comes every year when the days grow ever shorter and cold weather sets in. So I was somewhat worried, I confess. But I had survived so many seasons now that I was one of the biggest left, maybe even too big to be chosen. The people who came, the choosers, almost always favored the fairest ones, those of a certain age, about 12 to 15. I was 19 and far from fair. In fact, I was deformed. An accident when I was 7 had left an ugly scar, a bald and mangled patch too prominent to hide. Over the years, others had made fun of me with horrible names and mocking chants. It didn't help that back then I was also one of the smallest of those my age. The few elders left in our homestead tried to assure me that my size was normal, telling me that my kind simply grew slower and would catch up in time, that even my scars would fade. So much so that eventually no one would even notice. I never completely believed them, even though I wanted to. Elders like to fib, to try to make the young feel better. or alternately to scare them into behaving with their wild stories about the great harvester or the horrors of the burning winds. I guess I'm about to find out if any of those childhood tales are true. Even if my captors don't put an end to me soon, I know I can't last much longer, malnourished and exposed to the elements as I have been. Will the great harvester actually come for me to judge my life? I survived a glimpse of the burning winds, if only barely. Will I see them again at the end, in their full wrath? I try to suppress such horrible thoughts, but can't for long. Just the cold itself is almost unbearable now. And to think, up until a few weeks ago, I had never known what true cold really felt like. My whole life, or at least as far back as I could remember, I had lived on the farm. Broad fields surrounded by beautiful rolling hills with streams of the clearest water. It was all I had ever known, my home. If not for the culling, it would have been paradise. This year's choosers had already been coming for a few days, but their assessment of me so far had done nothing but reassure my beliefs. Most discounted me on size alone, with barely a glance. But others, likely those few who did seek a larger specimen, would be excited at first. They would often come up on my good side, maybe wondering how such a tall and rugged choice was still available, only to be disappointed after a closer look. During the culling, my scar was my salvation. In my youth, I had always wished that I could hide it, but now I wanted to turn my deformed side toward everyone who passed by, shove it in their faces, and dare them to pick me. "Look at the freak," I would have shouted if I had been able. "Take me. I dare you." With each new day, my confidence that I would live to see another year on the farm grew until they showed up. There was nothing particularly special about them. The four of them talked among themselves as they walked among the rows, or at least three of them did. The smallest ran about wildly playing in the new fallen snow, ignoring the shouts of the others directed toward him. I could not understand their language, and could only guess at their intentions by their expressions and gestures. The tallest of them walked past with a typical shrug and roll of his eyes when he spotted the bare area so prominent on my backside, but the woman walking next to him surprisingly stopped and lingered. The man turned back. These two stood beside me, not angrily arguing, but obviously in disagreement. Their gesturing and so blatantly pointing out my imperfections was rather embarrassing. So since I could not turn away, I shifted my attention to the fourth member of the group, a younger woman. She had taken over the group's attempts to curb the smallest one's rowdiness, and like myself, seemed inclined to ignore the couple's discussion. For some reason, I felt a strange kinship with her, though we had nothing in common except perhaps that we were of a similar age. Distracted as I was, the cold bite of sharpened steel teeth slicing into me came as a complete surprise. I would have screamed aloud in pain and defiance if I had a mouth, but a voice is not an ability of mine. If I had either arms or legs, the tools of mobility, I would have fought back. Unable to protect myself, the sawing continued, cutting straight through the heart of me from one side to the other. Toppling to the ground, the view I had known for my entire life shifted dramatically in a sickening lurch, twisting sideways as I fell and landed in the snow. Cut in half, savagely severed from my underground parts, I truly felt the cold for the first time in my life. It started at the raw, fresh amputation wound in my trunk, shooting up my nearly 9 foot of height, flowing through every branch and needle. Instinctively, I reached out for the subterranean warmth of the soil, only to find more cold and frigid air in its place. Brutally exposed to the elements like never before, I was dragged helplessly through the snow. They hauled me toward the barn, the one that I had looked at in the distance day after day since I had grown tall enough to peek over the edge of the hillside. The familiar faces of the farming family waiting there briefly gave me hope that I could still be rescued. But they seemed friendly with the tormentors who were stealing me away, even helping them to throw me on top of their curious wagon and lash me down. Riding atop the wagon, we moved slowly away, the only home I had ever known receding behind me. But this was just the beginning of my ordeal. I was taken to their strange shelter and propped up in a corner in some bizarre mock replanting. Over the next several weeks, I was subjected to all manner of humiliation. I was bound with both lighted and glittery cords, had objects of all shapes and sizes hung from my branches, and even made to wear a silly sculpted version of a tiny woman with wings on top of me. I was starved, dehydrated, and deprived of sunlight. My only small consolation was that, inside their shelter, I was able to stay warm. Along with the abuse, the group made me the focal point in odd rituals. They liked to sit in the room with me, either staring vacantly into the lights wrapped around my torso, or watching a slender lighted box on the wall showing pictures of other people and places. And each day, boxes of all shapes and sizes, wrapped in colorful designs, were placed beneath me until they were stacked so high that they crowded against my lower branches. One evening, when only the two eldest of the group were there, they laid on the floor beside me, stripped off their outer coverings, and proceeded to wrestle and rub against one another for some unknown purpose. After the initial humiliation of being bound and adorned, I was little more than a silent witness to the weeks of bizarre events at the shelter. They all seemed to culminate one morning when, with all the members present, the boxes were torn open and their contents examined. Each member had a stack they processed, then stacked up whatever had been inside before hauling it away. They all seemed to take great pleasure in this particular exercise. After the day of the box openings, interest in me faded. The lights wrapped around me were turned off that night, and not turned back on the following morning, or the next. No one sat gazing dreamily at me, or laid beneath my branches, and no new boxes were set underneath. For nearly a week, I stood in the corner, ignored. Then one evening, for no apparent reason, I was noticed again. The woman turned on my lights, turned off all the other lights in the room, and she and the man sat across from me. They talked for hours, occasionally looking my way and drinking from a couple bottles until both had fallen asleep. I should have been worried that this renewed interest in me could bring with it new hardships, but I didn't have the will to care. Cut off from the earth, I was hungry, and I was so dry. The woman had thought to give me water once, but only once. That had been weeks ago. My needles had started to turn brown and become brittle. Some of the lights binding me were different than the others, and they gave off more heat. This had felt rather good weeks ago, but now they were becoming uncomfortably warm, almost hot. One spot in particular bothered me. Uncomfortable quickly rose to painful, and the small spot began to spread larger and larger. A new light began to flicker in dancing orange flares among my branches, emitting willowy black puffs at its edges. I recognized the description of the black wisps called smoke and the yellow-orange flashes of light known as fire. Great Harvester. It was the burning winds, that fearsome force that engulfed entire mountainsides in searing flame, consuming whole populations of pines. But this was how they started, we were taught. A small flame now, it would grow, and grow quickly. But what could I do? The pain intensified. Nothing in life had prepared me for this. The injury from my youth, no comparison to the agony I felt now. The man and woman slept on. I did not know if their kind could do anything to combat the burning winds, but they were animals, able to move and react, do things that immobile life like me couldn't, so it might be possible. But how to wake them? Never had I wished so much to have a true voice. Desperately, I yearned to scream into the night, to sound the alarm. As my branches burned and the destruction spread, the heat became excruciating. The walls and ceiling of the shelter started to blacken around me. I tried in vain to scream, to cry out at both the pain and injustice of it all. Flames lashed at the winged figure that sat atop my highest point. As she melted and fell, from somewhere near the very top of me, a wailing siren shriek suddenly burst forth, piercing the night and demanding attention. The man and woman both awoke quickly with the blaring noise, jumping up to action or escape. I didn't know which. The undulating noise persisted. The man and woman had been asleep. There were no signs of the other two, and I could find no other source for it. Could it be? Was it possible that this noise was coming from me? The man returned carrying a red can, stood back, and sprayed a dense cloud at the flames. The cloud was cold and smelled odd. To my amazement, it quenched most of the burning winds. The woman soon reappeared with a bucket of water, ran right up to me, coughing and sputtering, but splashing or pouring water on any bits of fire that remained or tried to rekindle. If this alarming wail was indeed coming from me, I couldn't stop. I didn't know how it had started, and now I couldn't stop it. The excitement was dying out with the burning winds, but the wailing remained. Wounded, coated in residue from the cloud, I was so exhausted that at first I didn't see the young woman coming at me, brandishing a long stick. She swung it back and forth, beating at my top branch, but missing and striking the ceiling of their shelter. Whether her actions sufficiently scared me, or I simply ran out of energy, after a few moments of her flailing, the screaming finally stopped. In the dark and quiet that followed, they huddled together, staring at me. Their actions had successfully beaten back the burning winds, but without the warning alarm, would they have come too late? Had I played a part in the response? If so, would they recognize my contribution and maybe take pity on me? They left slowly. I spent the night wondering. It was a somber group the next day who stripped me bare. Most everything that had hung from my branches was tossed carelessly into a single tall drum. Very few items were packed back in their original smaller containers. I was in a truly sorry state. Nearly half my branches were gone, burned away from my side. I was blackened and charred, the little moisture that had remained in me driven out by the heat. Once the remains of the bindings had been removed, the man wrapped a large piece of cloth about me, pulled me down, and roughly shoved me back out into the cold. Outside, he dragged me a good distance away from the shelter, as if to banish me from sight. I could only guess that since the burning winds had started with me, they were blaming me for the damage. I wanted to tell him the truth, but didn't try to speak again. Even if I had been able to speak, I knew that he wouldn't be able to understand, just as I heard them speak many times, but had no idea what they were saying. He left me there and sulked away, not saying a word to me either. 2 men in a large wagon picked me up and brought me here, along with so many others. I thought at first that this was a punishment for what had happened, but now I believe that this place would have been my destiny anyway. We lay in piles upon the stony ground, unable to even feel the comfort of a bit of soil beneath us.
In the 2 days I have been here, I have seen entire piles hauled to the far end of the yard. A terrible noise comes from there. The sun is up now, and the tractor-like machine that carries us away is coming for me. It lifts me up with a stack of my kinfolk and moves us toward the dreadful noise. As we approach, I can see men standing next to a large machine. I watch in horror as a man lifts a noble fur such as me, but still green and full and perfectly shaped. No matter, he feeds the poor tree into the machine, its grinding noises dropping just a fraction as if it might choke. But no, from its other end, it spits chips out into an ever-growing pile, our final resting place, though it hardly qualifies as restful. I am dumped next to the men, and before I even have time to panic, I am grabbed and carried forward. I can see into the machine now, see the spinning and glistening teeth that will be my demise. I look away in terror, but then we stop. When I dare look again, I see another man standing next to the machine, shaking his head and pointing back over his head. The men holding me start walking in the direction the other has pointed. I don't know what is happening, as I am hauled past all the other fallen trees awaiting their fate, carried to the very edge of the yard. I am cast down a hillside into a ravine. I land and slide clumsily the last few feet to the bottom, where a small creek flows through weeds and fallen leaves. There is very little snow here, but what there is on the sloped hill is pure and white. I can still hear the machinery grinding away above me, but the sound is muffled and faint, almost in another world. Because I have been transported out of the hell that was my life since being stolen from the farm, back to a world that I can understand. I am shocked, injured, as close to death as is possible, half burned away with no hope of recovering. But I have been released. Has all this suffering brought me to this place? Am I to be allowed to die a dignified, honorable death? Have I earned the right to lie upon the earth like one of the great sentinels of the forest, those that grow hundreds of feet and live hundreds of years before they finally fall to the forest floor and slowly, slowly pass back into it, until finally, just a brittle husk remains, a home for some small creatures, or sustenance for future generations. If such a restful end is to be mine, then I can be at peace with that. A noble end